Hello, friends. Welcome to the CHRONICLE podcast with your host, Rich Hamilton.
Welcome everybody to the show. On today's episode of the CHRONICLE podcast, I managed to catch up with Dr Callie Seaman. We spoke about all things hydroponics and about mental health and women in the industry. We had a great conversation and I hope you enjoy it too. Introducing the awesome Dr Callie Seaman. Today on the podcast I have Dr Callie Seaman. She's a fantastic writer for Garden Culture magazine and an awesome person. So welcome, Callie. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me today.
I know that you're super busy and I really appreciate you taking time out to be on the podcast and coming down and being with me today.
Not a problem. I think it's just time to get my out there and hear a little bit about me now.
Yeah, 100%. So let's start off. Where did it all begin with you? Where did it start, sort of?
Right, well, we go back to
Big question.
century. The last century, I think we started in about 1995.
Yeah.
When my dad took me to a grow shop called Aquaculture down at Bramall Lane.
Okay.
One of the first kind of shops that set up, and I used to go there with my dad. And then I went to uni shortly after.
Right.
Once I'd sort of done my A-levels and things, Sheffield Hallam, and I went into this house and went up into the top bedroom, looked out this bedroom, and aquaculture was over the back of this house, and it was, I've got to live here. I've got to live here. This house is mine.
Yeah.
So I rented that, and then got to know the boys better over, obviously, aquaculture, and then got a Saturday job there.
Right, okay.
I'd gone to work for GlaxoSmithKline for a year as part of my degree.
Right.
I was studying for a degree in biomedical sciences and desperately wanted to go into the pharmaceutical industry. I was going to cure AIDS. I was going to cure the world. Worked for GlaxoSmithKline for a year and realised that this was not for me. I am not a lab rat. This is not what I want to do.
Yeah.
And you obviously came back in the middle of the degree because it was a sandwich degree, and the boys in the shop says, "Oh, do you want a Saturday job? We're looking at expanding." Well, it was a Sunday job because Saturday it wasn't open because you had the football on. But I worked there on a Sunday and I think an all-day Thursday as well. And that's how I got into the industry. Started off as on the front line, in the shop, serving people.
On a Saturday job, doing the...
Yeah.
Right.
Whilst finishing my degree off. So that's how I started. And then went full-time because I didn't want to go back into being a lab rat. And aquaculture was expanding at that point. And they were moving up to a bigger premises. They were opening a lab up there, a manufacturing facility. The shop was going to be bigger. We were going to be the new and fresh. And I thought, no, this is an opportunity. I enjoy this. I enjoy the people I talk to. I enjoy the people I'm working with.
Yeah.
And it really went from there. So I then came up to the bigger site and then helped to set up the manufacturing plant there for a brand known as Vitalink originally. Then we used to manufacture that.
It's a great brand.
It's still up and running to this day. And we set up the manufacturing facility there and got that up and running. And during that time I did started doing a PhD in fertilizer chemistry.
Right, okay.
So that's how I started the PhD.
And how was that was that a big difference from sort of the degree into the PhD? Was it a big...
Massive, absolutely. You were treated as as more staff, so you were trusted. You could go in the lab on your own. On your own, and go play with that machine.
Did you have your own passkey?
Yes. Oh, and I had a late night one as well.
Cool.
So I could be in there at midnight. It was really nice going on to do a PhD because you got your own desk there as well. So, and you were treated as more as equal. You weren't just a student there.
Yeah.
Your opinion was counted. You know, it was valid. They wanted to know you were doing cutting-edge research. Now, for the first year, you weren't doing cutting-edge research. For the first year, you were just basically learning how to use the techniques, method development, and none of the data you got out of in your first year was any good whatsoever. But it was a big learning curve, really big learning curve, very steep learning curve.
Lots of work.
Yeah, a lot of work. It wasn't 9 to 5. PhDs are not 9 to 5, and anybody thinking about doing one, do not do it part-time. Do it full-time. Put your whole effort into that. Yeah. But during that time, aquaculture obviously went into administration, and I was approached to set up Aqua Labs.
Right. Okay.
So we set up Aqua Labs. I took a 6-month period out of doing my PhD, helped set up Aqua Labs, then finished my PhD as well. Again, very stressful time, and I wouldn't recommend doing it to anybody, because it did sort of affect my health quite badly.
Right. It's stressful. It's a big thing.
Yeah,
It's
and
a huge thing. Not many people can do it. You know, you have to be a certain, different person.
you've got to have a mindset of wanting to succeed. But from where I came from, I came from a very, it's a mining town, old mining town. So when all the mines were being closed, a lot of my friends were being affected. There was a lot of high unemployment. I had free dinners when I was out of school because my dad was going from job to job to job. So I come from what you would call below,
A low economic sort of background.
Yeah. Then we had in the 1990s, we had the heroin epidemic hit Worksop, and it hit it hard. So there was a lot of people I'd gone to school with, you'd seen in the street, you'd played with, who had now got this smack problem.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of people overdosing, and it really did sweep through the town. So there was a lot of robberies happening, a lot of burglaries happening. I had a car stolen when I lived at home. And this was just quite a normal thing for the town. So I'd seen the depression hit. So I was determined that I wasn't going to allow this to happen to me. I was going to work hard, and I just worked constantly hard and went to university, did the degree in biomedical sciences, and then just always strove to that I can do more. There's always more you can do. And since the age of 15, I've never been out of a job. Even if it's voluntary work, it's an important mindset to have, that and never give up, because
it is super important. I think nowadays as well, not to sound too egotistical and like an old man, but there is so much of the young generation that just think that it just gets handed to them on the plate. And it's hard work. And if you do come from an economical, struggling background, you've got to work harder. You've got to put those extra hours in. You've got to have that extra, you've got to have that extra oomph, because everybody has those standard sort of, relationship problems or bill problems, but you've got to kind of sweep that aside, and you've got to sort of see a clear focus ahead. And I think nowadays that's kind of missing in a lot of the youth culture at the moment.
Well, I think they believe that making the cups of tea is below them. We all have to start at making cups of tea, sweeping the floor.
100%.
We all have to start at, that point. When the manufacturing side of things started, I was picking up, I was doing the 2,000 litre blends, I was, getting filthy, making sure that the blends were made and getting sent off to be bottled. I've done all of that.
You've done the groundwork. You've earned your stripes. You've moved through the ranks.
Yeah, and all the calluses on the hands and, the scars from acid burns and things. But, that's part and parcel of it. It's kind of like your story, your map was on you. And it's, without having that grounding, you can't really tell somebody else how to do that job. And there isn't a job within aquaculture or Aqua Labs that I would not have done myself and asked somebody else to do. I don't believe any job is below me. Now, luckily enough, I have a fantastic workforce now who do a lot of those, hard work now. But there is no job here I would say, I'm not doing that. That's below me.
You'd roll your sleeves up and get stuck in.
Yeah, I still quite often do. Nowhere near as much as, I used to have to. As I say, we've got a good staff force now, which I'm very lucky for. I'm very grateful for.
It's so hard, especially in this industry. I always bang on about it's really hard to find the right people.
Yeah.
It's one of the most important things, especially with sort of hydro shops. I've said it a million times before, and I will say it again. Most hydro shops, you can buy the same thing in every single hydro shop. It's pretty much identical, apart from certain variants. But the staff are completely unique, and the experience that they give the customers and what they have is completely unique. And getting the right staff in that position, it's a tough job.
It's a big trust thing as well.
It is.
It's a really big trust thing. I mean, something that I really do, when I started Aqua Labs, something I wanted to do was actually build a company that helps support the workforce. So one of the big things I like to do is if 50% of my workforce was unemployed before they came to work for us.
Right,
so we were putting people back into work.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to see, and more of the staff force that moving forwards. I would rather give somebody who's been out of work a job, to give them an opportunity to be able to, get themselves out of, the troubles that they're in, rather than just, poaching someone from somewhere else. I understand that, there's got to be skill sets as well, but I really do want to make sure that my workforce are happy. I like to pride myself as well in the fact that it's about family as well. It's about important dates, making sure everybody has the birthday off. That is one of the rules that we have there as well. We had Family Friday this summer. So everybody it was the last Friday of summer, everybody had that Friday off, so we could go off, have some time with the family within the sunshine, and just have quality family time. I also like to give my staff private healthcare as well, so that I know that if they've got a problem with their back, they're not going to go struggle on. They'll go to the chiropractor, they'll go to the physiotherapist, they'll get the teeth sorted, and I just want to give that more back. I want to give more back than what I'm taking from this world.
Well, that's fantastic, because like you said, it's the easy option to go and poach someone from another company that's already sort of established. You pay the wage, you get the person. It's headhunting. It's headhunting 101. But to actually take somebody that does have a skill set and take them through the ranks, give them a job, give them an opportunity to work hard and do well, and teach them and train them over a long period of time, I think that's incredible.
And it's belief in our staff as well. We like to be able to, allow them to move forward in their lives. So if they're lacking training, we'll look at actually getting that training for them, be it forklift, be it higher education as well. We're open to everything. So after you started up the Aqua Labs, what happened then? What was the next step then? Right, so we've got the whole. I finished my PhD.
When you finish your PhD, do you have to do like a proper paper at the end and everything? So I don't think a lot of people that are listening probably don't know what the end of a PhD looks like. Some people just think it's kind of like an extra couple of years on a degree.
Right. So I'll describe a PhD. So you start off doing it thinking that you're going to save the world and you're going to do world-changing papers. The reality of it is you're going to spend a lot of time in the lab or getting no results out, pulling your hair out, wondering why this stupid instrument isn't working again, and getting very stressed. And you do get some papers out of it, so you spend that time. Normally you would take 3 to 4 years. I did mine part-time, so it took 7 years. World's longest PhD. Well, no, to be fair, I took several chunks of time out I took nearly a year and a half out in total in order to set the company up, to set Aqua Labs up, and to business partner as well. He broke his leg halfway through when we were starting the company up, so I had to take some time out as well to then come back into the business to keep things moving there. So what you end up doing is you spend the first year just actually trying to understand the experiments you're doing and planning those. After that, you're desperately trying to get some data that means something. Then the last 3 weeks, you spend every waking hour in the lab just trying to get data out, and then you write up. So you spend the last period of time actually writing what's known as your thesis. It's usually a big fat book, which is then printed and is then placed into the archives at the University of Wales, Sheffield Halmworth, where I was. So what you do is you submit your thesis, and all of a sudden this big pressure comes off of you. About 6 weeks later, you're told then, right, you're going to have your Viva. We're going to quiz you on this.
Right, okay.
So that's anywhere between, the shortest one I've heard of is an hour and a half. The longest one is 7 hours.
7 hours.
So you get somebody else from another university who has sat and read your thesis, and then they pull it to bits. What do you mean by this? Why didn't you do this? And they are the idea is to push you to the point of where you can't answer anymore.
Right. Okay.
So it's and they're pushing to see how far you know, and that's why sometimes it can take 7 hours, because the discussion can just keep going and keep going and keep going.
Sounds like a parole hearing.
Yeah, very much so. I think parole hearing is probably easier.
Right.
And then you come out of that going, and then they tell you you've got these corrections to do because you've got a spelling mistake in chapter 4 on line 6.
So paragraph 7, subsection D.
Yeah. And you need to rewrite this section. It doesn't make sense. Put a little bit more in here. Well, you told me about that. Why didn't you write about that? I didn't think it was relevant. Okay, I'll put it in. I'll put it in. So you go off and then you do that, and then they go, well done. have a graduation ceremony. And then you go, well, what am I doing now? Which I kind of did a little bit for a while of, I finished my PhD. What next?
Did it feel good when you had that doctorship? Did you feel good putting that doctor just at the front of your name?
Yes.
Did it?
Yeah, right.
It
This is so egotistical, and I am not. Don't think that I don't think I'm ever above anyone else. It's not. But I went and got me the first thing I did, bank card. Roll up the bank card. Yes, it's doctor.
Doctor.
Dr. Seaman to you. And then that kind of fades away. The first kind of year you do, you kind of fade, it then fades away.
But you deserve it. You've worked for it. You've worked hard for it. So.
Yeah. I still feel there's so much I don't know. So much I don't know. So much I'm wanting to do. But I never actually imagined I'd be where I am now on the medical cannabis scene. This is just, it's insane. Yeah. I never thought all those years ago, I always said when I was doing my A-levels that I would be a doctor. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to actually set up Fixters Pharmaceuticals. That was my dream, and it was always a joke in sixth form. We're getting there. It's still on the horizon. I don't know if we're going to call it Fixters, but we'll see. That's a different story anyway. But that was always my dream. I always wanted to be a doctor, and always had this kind of ambition to do this, and always had this drive. Now I'm going to probably talk about something quite controversial here in the fact of Margaret Thatcher. If people, even in my town that I come from, even mention her name, you're throwing rotten tomatoes at you. But as growing up, a woman being in power, regardless of her politics or anything, seeing a woman in power who came from a working class background gave a generation of women that drive to be able to say, actually, I can do this. Actually, I can be in charge of a big company. You know, it's not just men. And just seeing that as you're growing up, and this woman in power actually subliminally is telling you that you are worthy. You are worth it. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what background you come from. And anyone who says, oh, well, you were born into the wrong background. No, you just work harder.
That's exactly right. 100%.
Anyone using the excuse of, oh, well, I was born into the wrong background, this happened.
It's kind of an excuse. Yeah. I get it. You know, people do come from bad backgrounds. People do come from good backgrounds, but you've got to work hard. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether you have or you don't have money. There's a work ethic there. Yeah. And there's a respect that you have for other people and knowledge. Yeah. And I think that, again, I see a lot of it lacking. There's so many people that they talk big, and there's a difference between talking big and actually doing it. And that's the one thing I always try and say to people. I have a lot of people, obviously we write for Garden Culture magazine, big up Eric, #Eric. And people often ask me, say, oh, I could write an article. Oh, I want to write an article. How do I do that? What's the first thing that I do? And I always say, just do it. Yeah. Get your pen and paper. Don't worry about your spelling or anything like that. Just get it out. Just do it. That's the first step, is doing it. You can talk about it, but you've got to do it. So the first step is doing it. So like you say with Margaret Thatcher, you'd never hear that sort of story where she inspires people. No. You only ever hear the tyranny and the bad things that she did, but there is a flip side to. Yeah, regardless of I can't believe I'm saying that from Birmingham. Yeah,
and as I say,
it affected Birmingham hard, So yeah,
it affected everyone. But forget the politics. It was the actual as I say, in the 80s. I was a child of the 80s, so seeing a woman in power, regardless of what she did in power, an actual woman, that figure, and the first woman prime minister, put that mindset into me, saying, "Yeah, I can do this. I can actually work. I can be somebody who has a business. I can be somebody who can strive to better myself. I don't have to just stay here and, be a housewife.
Be a housewife, or get consumed with the, that, like you said, the heroin culture or the drug culture that I think ravaged. And again, this is something that's not really spoken about around that sort of Thatcher sort of era of the 80s, maybe even early 90s, before the rave scene, that whole heroin. Yeah. People came out of the mine, people lost their jobs, there's a huge down slump, but no one really talks about the drug problems in those areas. And small mining towns, Stoke is quite, renowned for it, and various places, heroin was rife.
Yeah, and you saw people who had, jobs, who were, I don't like to use the word normal. I'm trying to find another word than normal. But, you know, they would get up, go to work, and all of a sudden we'd got people, as I say, dying as well. Or, you know, you would see people that I went to school with, I'd played football with, and all of a sudden they're robbing grannies just to be able to get their next hit. And it was, the North, I think, got very much ignored for all of this. It was only you really realised what was happening when Train Spotting came out. I mean, that had such an impact on me. The soundtrack's just amazing soundtrack.
It's up there. It's up there. That Reservoir Dogs is kind of like the soundtracks. It's incredible.
See, I prefer Natural Born Killers, but
you do?
Yeah.
I do like that. Not many people mention that. I saw that at the cinema. It was fantastic.
Best love story ever.
Yeah.
Woody Harrelson in it. Oh, when he shaves his head. Oof. Yeah.
Oof.
Just give me a moment.
Yeah. Woody Harrelson is great as well.
Oh,
he's a fantastic actor.
Oh, just everything about him. He's so in Zombieland.
Have you seen Double Tap, the new one?
No.
Yeah, I went to see that at the 4D cinema the other week.
Worth it?
Yeah. You would like it. If you like Woody, you would love it.
Oh, brilliant. And in fact, it had Bill Murray in as well. Playing Ghostbusters. See, Ghostbusters is actually, this is a funny one, going back to my childhood. Ghostbusters was actually what inspired me to become a scientist.
Really?
Yeah, Igor. You know Igor?
Egon. Yeah, Egon Spengler.
Yeah. And he sat in the he's in his lab and he's got all these instruments with the names on. It's like, I'm going to do that. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a scientist, just like the Ghostbusters. Not quite that crazy, but yeah, that's what That's
fantastic. It must have been hard work with everyone else around you. I'm guessing it was pretty lonely, I guess.
In some respects, yeah. In some respects. But loneliness is just a state of mind.
Yeah, it is.
And it's something that I have experienced lately. Something I've come out of denial of part of. I mentioned earlier that I had health problems during my PhD.
Yeah.
These really started when I was 15 years old.
Right,
So again, this is where I get kind of frustrated with people who keep saying that this stopped them doing this stopped them that. When I was 15, I had a grand mal, an epileptic seizure at school.
Right.
I was on the school field. I'd asked me, I wasn't very well that day. My mum had wrote me a note for PA, and I remember sitting down on the field, and then the next thing I remember, I was going into the back of an ambulance. And the whole school was stood round looking at me going into the back of an ambulance, and I'd got no idea what had happened.
Jeepers.
Turns out I'd had a full bore, what's known as a tonic-clonic seizure, which is the classic one that everybody knows, where you're sort of, I don't know if I was foaming at the mouth, but you're shaking violently. You pass out completely. It's just like going to sleep for me.
Right.
But what you have before this is what's known as an aura. It's a warning sign.
Okay.
And this is like a warm feeling that occurs within me. And now I'm talking more and more about it, and it's quite strange. The last couple of years has been quite an epiphany for me. These last couple of years, I've come out of denial of my epilepsy. As I say, I had this when I was 15, and was took straight into hospital, was sent home, had another one at home, and then was very quickly put onto medication for 2 years. This is when I was doing my GCSEs. Now, anyone who knew me at that point, I was a straight A student. I was a little geek, always a good girl, always did as I was told, always went to school, did everything, did my homework on time. Geek.
So this warm feeling you have before you have it sort of before a seizure, does it feel like how does that feel? Does that feel like you're going to pass out, or like how does that sort of, what's that sensation?
There's no other feeling like it in the world, and there's only other warriors, and I call anyone who's got epilepsy a warrior, because that's what we are. We've come back for more, and it's a deja vu, feeling like you've been there before. We call it a glitch in the matrix.
Right.
So you go, this is weird, and then it starts, and then for me, this is mine, and everyone has a different one. Sometimes it's a smell, sometimes it's a noise, sometimes it's a feeling. For me, it starts in my feet. It's a warm feeling that comes up. And have you seen the Death Eaters on Harry Potter?
Yes,
and
big Harry Potter fan.
Yeah.
One of my daughters called Luna.
Oh, Quanta.
From Harry Potter.
Oh. I love all of them. And
Yeah.
if they just... Well, the
Prisoner Azkaban, if you're asking, is my favourite, but yeah.
yeah, because yeah.
That's where it starts turning dark. you
Yeah.
see. That's what I like.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
the first one's a bit kind of... Well, you have to get the feel of the first one.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, I think I like that one. It's... Yeah, I just...
Yeah.
Well, it's like the Death Eaters. That feeling, the aura, it's like it's
like
enveloping you.
Right.
So it comes up and it sort of envelops, and then it comes up to your head, and then what can happen is you get like this like tunnel vision will come in on me.
Where everything sort of closes down.
Yep, and it comes in and it's warm, and the whirligigs start, and they're like little whirligig, and then boom, you're out cold on the floor. Well, what happened? Well, that's what happened at school. Well, as I said, they put me on medication when I was 15 for 2 years, no more fits. And for 20 years, I'd not had any. Well, I didn't think I'd had any. Actually, turns out I've been having these auras that I've just spoke about for years and years and years. But I just saw them as hot flushes. It wasn't until I was finishing my PhD, I was here on my own. I was loading a wagon up to actually be took to the bottlers. And it was a very, very hot day, and I was exceedingly stressed. I was trying to write my PhD up at the same time as well. And that feeling started in my, the aura started, and it came over me. And sillily, I went to the toilet, which I normally would do when I start to have these flushes, to go and calm myself down and talk to myself down and calm myself down. This time it didn't work. I went to the toilet, I stood up, and boom, out cold. Hit a sink on the way down and smashed my tooth, big egg on my head, blood everywhere, and I was still in denial at this point. So I'm crawling out the toilet, covered in blood, going, no, I've just fainted. It's just fainted. No, wasn't fit, just fainted. So ambulance, went to hospital, and it wasn't for 4 months till I got a neurologist's appointment, which I didn't even realise I needed. And he just told me that you've always been epileptic. What? Hey, you can't drive anymore. What? Wow. Hey. So it was
a shock.
Massive shock. I plummeted into quite a nasty depression at that point. At this point, I'm still trying to write up the PhD. I'm still trying to finish everything off. Jeez. I'm still trying to get bits of data. I'm still...
And work.
Yeah.
And be in a relationship.
Yeah.
And everything else.
And be a mum and keep going. And you just keep... I mean, the fantastic thing about denial is there is no problem. Because you're in denial. There's no problem. What problem? What are you on about? There's no problem. And until someone sits you down and goes, yeah, actually, you've always been epileptic. It's just you've hit the point where you've actually crashed and burned now. So...
Did you ever see it as sort of the part of the denial with having sort of a seizure when you was young? Did you ever think that you was in partly denial because it was sort of like a weakness? You didn't want to sort of talk about it or represent it or speak about it because you might have perceived it as a weakness, or...
I saw myself as a monster.
Really?
It's like a werewolf.
Wow. You
wouldn't know someone was a werewolf until the full moon comes out, and then you see this monster. Yeah. And do you know one of the worst things about having a fit is coming round and seeing the shock in people's faces. They're looking at you and you can see the sheer terror of, you're not dead. It stopped. And that was the worst bit. That's the worst bit about it. And I didn't want to be that. When I was at school, people treated me very differently after that. It happened at school. I found graffiti scrawled into tables with Callie. When I wasn't married, I was Fixter. That's my maiden name. Nobody keep that. Don't want you doing any fraudulent claims on me. So yeah, I
that must have been tough.
Yeah,
in front of the whole school as well.
Yeah,
that must have been tough.
And I found scrawled into the table, Callie Fixter is a smackhead, which I was far from it. Which really kind of was really hurtful. One of the worst things was the older generation, actually. I started doing yoga at that time as well, and went to a yoga class, and the yoga instructor, she lit a candle and came up to me in front of the whole class and said, "Don't look at the flame, it can cause seizures." And I just
Great.
I wanted the
Oh,
world.
Great. I've picked the right one here.
I'd come here for relaxation, and now you're pointing out to everybody that I'm epileptic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So at that point, I just wanted to go, I don't want to be epileptic. You can't drive when you're epileptic, and I don't want to this. I don't want to be this. So yeah, that was part of it. And dealing with that at school as well, people were very wary around you, not because they didn't like you. It was they were scared of it happening with them.
Right.
I think that was it. They
Yeah.
were scared they had to deal with this, because it is very scary to see. And as I say, then for 20 years, didn't have a grand mal. I was having petty mals, not even realising I was having them, which is these auras. And then I had, as I say, the one here. And then a year later, I was training to do a half marathon, works up half marathon. I did the half marathon. 2 days later, I had another one at work. And at that point is where I came out of denial.
Right.
What was the point of going, no, you are Callie. This is time to be completely out of denial and really address this and start reading about it, because before I wouldn't read about it. I'd start reading about it, I'd get angry, I'd start crying. I then would put the phone down and I'm not having this. I am not this monster. No. So I actually denied myself a lot of knowledge and reading about it because I didn't want to be part of it. But then I slowly came out of denial and started going on to Instagram. And Instagram's, you're anonymous. I love the fact you're anonymous.
Yeah.
So started looking at epilepsy positivity, CBD for epilepsy, separating the strains. And Chelsea Leyland, she is such an inspiration, an absolute. I thank this woman because she helped me so much, because she'd sit there and she'd talk about what she was doing and about the feelings. And she's this young woman who was proud to be epileptic. Wow. And it was to find someone doing that and talking openly was, I sat and cried and watching her do this. And it was just fantastic to see that somebody was so brave to talk about this and that we weren't monsters. So I started talking more about it. And I also, and this person will be listening to this, and I thank him so much. He really did change my whole opinion of it. Because I started posting about epilepsy, and he started chatting to me about it, and he told me that you've got to look at this completely different, Cal. This is a superpower you've been given. This is not a curse. This is a superpower. And as soon as you start thinking about it, it's a superpower. And he says, does your brain work at 100 miles an hour? Yeah. Do you constantly think about, have you got 3 million ideas going through your head and you want to do them all? Yeah. It's very normal for a lot of people with epilepsy that the brain moves so fast and the ideas are coming so quickly.
Right.
And it can be it's everything's firing and you want to just do everything. So you have to embrace it. I now call it George.
So you've named it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You give it a personality.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And addressing it and looking at it from a different perspective really does help. It's what I can say to someone. If we're out and I feel it over coming on, I can say, oh, George is here. And you don't get people going, right, move everything.
Panic.
Right, yeah. If you've got a friend, you've got your buddy who knows, and you go, George is here, they know to just stay with you. I mean, it's fine.
Yeah.
So it's code. But as I say, now I see myself as a warrior. And everybody who is epileptic is a warrior. And I now have people messaging me on Instagram and various ways, talking to me about what's happening to them, what treatment they're using,
That's
what
fantastic.
I'm doing. And it gives me such a sense of fulfillment and such a sense that I'm helping. I'm going to drop a hashtag in there, hashtag facing epilepsy. Thanks Chelsea Leyland, separating the strains. They are amazing people, and I really, really thank them for just being so open, so welcoming, so just inspirational, that make you feel that you're not this monster.
It's great that you're taking that baton and you're sort of running with that baton as well and putting it out there. I think it's a big step to come to understanding with it. Like, it's so hard for me to even understand that sort of train of mind. I suppose it's a little bit like Vietnam. If you've not been there, you don't know it is as simple as that. But sort of do that and then be in this industry and then speak about that, I have the utmost admiration for you. It's incredible.
Thank you. It's been a difficult, don't get me wrong, it's been a difficult 2 years.
What do you find helps when you feel something coming on? Is there anything that actually helps you sort of focusing, or meditation, or sort of putting yourself or taking yourself away? What's the...
I've got into mindfulness a lot.
Right,
so
okay.
visualization of particular things,
Yeah.
being able to deal with it. I know what my triggers are now.
Right, okay.
Lack of sleep,
Yeah.
which is... I've had to give up partying. Had to give up staying up all night, so I have to go to bed at 10 o'clock like a good girl,
Yeah.
and it's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. No, I used to like to party a lot. I used to like to dance a lot, and I do miss it, don't get me wrong. And that was part of the kind of the depression as such. Also, is there's a grieving for old life. I'm tickling 40 now, and we all want to be young again.
Yeah.
We all want to be 19 again. But I've had to give a lot of that up. Eating better, so eating fresher food.
It's making right choices, isn't it? Just making a better choice.
Yes, and feeling when you're getting stressed, knowing, you know,
When to turn off.
Yes, yeah.
That it's okay to close that laptop. It's
Yes.
okay to turn off that phone, put it on silent, leave
Yeah.
it in the kitchen, move away. And that's so hard for somebody who's so driven and career driven like yourself. That must be tough.
Yes, it's insanely, because your mind is going
100%. Yeah.
constantly.
Yeah.
But what has been fantastic in the last 2 years is getting into the medical cannabis scene. That is just, every day blows. The events I'm going to, you stand there going, are we actually here? Are we actually here talking about cannabis? Really? Honest? No. I'm not stood in the Houses of Parliament talking about medical cannabis. Am I going to wake up in a minute? Yeah. No, it's real.
Yeah,
Pinch
it's
me,
real.
pinch,
It's
pinch.
real. I can talk about this. It's
Yeah.
okay. I'm not going to get arrested or booed or hissed, or people aren't going to throw something at me, or I'm not going to,
One of my most epithical moments this year, if that's even a word. Is that a word, epithical? Have I just made it up? It's one, Callism. I've got lots of those. I
Nice.
love them.
Callism's a new word as well. With hashtag Callism. I'm going to start trending that straight away.
It's like the hashtag moist.
Yeah.
We'll not get back onto Woody Harrelson again, shall we not? No, we'll leave that one for now. Yeah, I was at the CMC, the Centre for Medicinal Cannabis, and the JMCC, is Jamaica Medical Cannabis Symposium this year, and it was designed for academics from around the world, all coming together to talk about the uses of medical cannabis in various different diseases.
Yeah.
And I was on the patients panel there and talking about it. And one of the things that has always been an issue for me is the feeling like I'm a bad person.
Right.
Inside, feeling like a bad person. And at the end of this session, this professor who was curating the actual session, he turned around and says, what I took from that, Callie, is you're not a bad person. You're far, far from a bad person. And I cried with just tears of joy of what I'm trying to do is making a difference in people's lives. And there's still a long, long way to go. Don't get me wrong, we are nowhere near there. There is still a lot. There's, very few prescriptions being given out on the NHS.
Yeah.
There is, as I say, there's still a lot of education to do, but we're breaking down that stigma associated with it. We're completely breaking it down. Being part of Can Talks, we were this summer we were at Cambridge University. We did 2 actual events there, where it was again bringing academics together and bringing patients together as well to talk to the wider community, to take that stigma away from it, to sort of say these are not bad people who are consuming, they're doing it for health reasons, and these are not bad people. They've got careers, they've got families, and they're paying their taxes, and it is, the stigma's been removed, but there's been a lot of bad information given out.
There has, and I think we are breaking down those things, and I think when I go over to America, it seems a lot more open, and you just, there is a choice there. Obviously, there's still things that are federally illegal, and that's a different issue. But it's just so much open there. And when I come back to the UK, it's almost like we're kind of still living a little bit in the dark ages. We've moved forward so much, but there are still so many barriers to break down. But you're seeing, people talking about cannabis and CBD. I'm seeing it on big billboards now on the motorway. It's on sort of soaps, and it's on sort of TV shows. I think I've still got probably about 3 this mornings I need to watch, because people have recorded things that are talking about CBD or medical cannabis, and it's certainly moving in the right direction.
Oh, it's massively changing.
But it has to move in the right direction though, because there is a dark side to it.
Yes.
And we need to make sure that we're doing it right and in the right way.
Yeah, and for me, it is understanding what the consumer is getting.
Yeah.
So, yes, for some people, high THC products will be problematic. It will cause psychosis in them. It's like any drug. It's like any drug that you get from the doctors. There is always side effects, and if we pretend that there isn't, I think we're kidding ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm noticing with a lot of the events I'm going to, some are, cannabis is being the silver bullet. It's going to cure everything. It's not going to cure everything. It's going to help a lot. Quality of life improver. Yes, there is evidence that it does shrink tumours, in particular types of cancer. There is lots and lots of evidence for epilepsy, for pain, but it's not going to be the silver bullet that it's been marketed as.
No.
It is, as I say, it's got lots of medicinal properties, but I think we need to get away from that, and I think we need to also make sure that the quality of the product that is out there is known. So if you've got a strain that is high in CBD or CBG or THCV, you should be able to have that information.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I'll go back to America. That's the great thing going to a dispensary in America. They have all that information on hand. Also, a good thing is, which I noticed that Mr. Jose brought up, was that if you're a first-time user, it's okay to, in America where it's a dispensary, it's okay to tell them that, because they want to know that, because what they can do then is they can also tell you the effects of it.
Yeah.
So they can make sure, like alcohol, we know what if you have a glass of wine, you know the effects of that, and people can gauge that because we do it from, a younger age. But especially with cannabis, medical cannabis and certain CBDs, I think it's so important to be aware of the effects of those and what they can do to you, especially edibles as well, for example.
I think I saw an interview with somebody, and they'd got this, what was it? They'd rung up, 111, and they thought they were dying.
On edibles?
Yeah,
right,
they thought they were dying. Like, you're not going to die, but it feels like I'm going to die.
It's a roller coaster that as soon as you're on, you're not getting off until it finishes. But
well, this is part of I'm also part of something called CPAS, which were a patient advocacy group. I can't say that word. There's some words.
Advocacy, is that right?
That's right.
Right. Okay.
You say it for me.
Okay.
There's certain words I can't say. And we are looking to educate nurses, because nurses are on the front line. They're the people who people will quite open, be more honest with and open up to. And the nurses need training on how to deal with the whitey. I mean, somebody can feel like they are literally dying.
Yeah.
And if they've been given something by a good willing friend, a friend who's like, oh, I can make you some ash brownies, we'll get you some of them. And they've taken them, they've ate it, and then not realised that this is not going to stop.
Yeah, it's not for them.
Yes. But having somebody there to be able to talk them down, to be able to say, it's going to be all right, get them into the right environment, get some Amiibo into them. Here, have some
maybe a cheese toasty, nice cup of tea.
That kind of thing. It can all be knowing how to deal with that. And those kinds of effects can be made 10 times worse with the wrong person.
Yeah, I think so. And that's a great point. Joking aside from sort of the munchies, it is. And that's a great point. I don't think doctors as well. I mean, nurses, because they have emergencies that come in all the time. But I don't think doctors fully understand it either, to be fair.
They've not been educated. That's the problem. When I did my degree 20 years ago, I feel old. No, the endocannabinoid system never came up. Never. Did not exist. Medical doctors, endocannabinoid system doesn't exist, but it's now moving forward. So the doctors, there's a lot of focus at the moment from what I'm seeing with the Academy of Medicinal Cannabis. They're focusing on educating the doctors. It's more frontline people I now want to see being educated.
Yeah.
So social workers, midwives, those people who are dealing are what I call on the coal face.
Yeah.
They are dealing day to day with people that the general public trust more. Doctors, unfortunately, and I had this issue with my neurologist, Dr. God syndrome. They are more educated, so you kind of just go, yeah, okay, you're right, and
Yeah.
they also have this attitude of they are right. Who are you to question me? So people do tend to not question the doctor because they've done 7 years.
We just take it for granted, don't you? They're
Yeah.
a doctor. You're not. Well, for me, I'm not. You've obviously know more about this than me. My life's in your hands. That's kind of why you're here. So yeah, but you're right. They should question that.
Yeah, do question it. But as I say, as part of the work that I'm getting involved with, as I say, with CPAS, is we wanting to help educate everybody. We were curating the new normal.
Yeah. So with CPAS, if people want to find out about that, how would they go to find out about it? On the website or social media?
Yeah, www.cpas.com. I will, if you check out my page on Instagram,
Which is?
Dr Callie Seaman.
Yeah.
It still feels weird to say that sometimes.
What, Dr. Callie Seaman?
Yeah.
You deserve it.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah. It's still, I still think I'm going to wake up. Every time I do anything, as I say, every time when you're in the Houses of Parliament and you're talking with people about it openly and about how we can change things, how we can get access for patients, how we can bring people together, because we go on about the doctors need educating, all of the actual your politicians that need the education. It's a whole set of people needs an education and re-education from reefer madness of your wife's going to run off with a milkman and kind of become crazed, and we need to remove that. But what we also need to do is have a better understanding of what's out there, because the actual the strength of the cannabis that's now available has doubled in over 10 years. It's not like it used to be 20 years ago.
100%. And this is what I try and sort of get through to a certain generation, is that you've got to kind of look at it it's like the Tenant Super, really.
Yes.
It's like a super duper duper strong. Like, my father drinks Skull, or used to drink Skull. If you remember Skull,
Skull. I don't know words.
Yeah. I think there was an advert with is it Hagrid?
Hagrid, yeah. Hagar the Horrible.
That's it.
And he didn't know the words. Going, I don't know the words. Skull. Yeah. Anyway,
so the volume, the percentage volume of alcohol in that is next to nothing. It's like 1% or whatever it was. It was ridiculous. Where sort of now people aren't drinking that like they used to.
Yeah,
they're drinking, Stella or whatever it is that's sort of strong, or even stronger beers, and it's like a Tenant Super. And I see that has sort of like the cannabis now has got to that length where it's sort of that super strength, where it's not for everybody.
Yeah. And you need to be able to make an informed decision about what you're consuming. Yeah. I mean, in an ideal world, and this is what I would love to see happening, and it be the stigma removed that much, that if somebody is choosing to cultivate their own or having to purchase their own, they feel not embarrassed to go into the doctor and say, this is the produce I am using. Can you send this off to a laboratory? Can you test it for me? Can you tell me what is the cannabinoid profile? What's the terpene profile? What's the microbial content of this? Has this got any pesticides on it? Has it got any heavy metals in it? And it needs to be made safe for the consumer. And then that be put onto their record so they can then monitor that disease. Yeah. How is it benefiting? How is this strain that's got a particularly high amount of your CBC in? Is this helping with your pain, or is it not? And I really want to see it that people don't feel that they're doing something wrong, that they are bad for doing that.
Well, it's looking for choices. It's well documented, and I've spoke about it on the podcast before, but in the past I suffered from depression, and when I went to the doctors, I've been numerous times, but over the years, but when I first started, when I was young, it was exactly like you described. They give you a medicine and you go, okay, this is it. You know, some doctors say, oh, it's a chemical imbalance. Some say, you know, it varies. And they give you a medication and that sort of changes you a little bit. And then they give you another medication to combat that medication. Then they give you another medication to combat stomach ulcers. And then they give you another nerve medicine. And it just sort of goes on. And I think at one stage I was on probably 12 different medicines. And it's disabilitating. It really is. So to question that and then move to something sort of recreational that I might have been, you know, using recreational that I then sort of wanted to sort of maybe look at sort of a medicinal properties of, it would have been so much informative at that later stage if I knew those profiles or what that could do for me or if that could help with me. I really do.
It's kind of a bit like at the moment, the people who are having to seek medical cannabis, it's a little bit like going to the pharmacy and there being no labels. Or somebody's gone in with stick-it notes and gone, that's the diazepam, that's the tramadol, that's the paracetamol, but we think that that's it, and they all get mixed up again, and no one really knows for sure what they've got, that they're trusting the seed company, or they're trusting, you know, who they've got it from, that it is what they say. So that kind of uncertainty needs removing.
It needs a regulation. There needs to be a regulation on, and it does need to be tested, especially if people, you know, I'd never advise to buy anything from the black market, but if people do buy from the black market, you don't know what you're getting. Correct. You know, it is literally you are playing Russian roulette with your life. Yeah. We've all heard about the deaths in America over vape pens recently. I don't know if you have, but
well, that's a lot to do with the carriers that they're using, or the actual vaporizers themselves, not the product. It's, I mean, you say you play Russian roulette. I mean, for someone like myself who's epileptic, that if you've got a strain that actually encourages seizures, which it does, or you know, you've changed that and you've changed that ratio and you don't know what that ratio is, a seizure can result in the end of your life. I mean, nobody's ever overdosed on cannabis. Everybody thinks that they're nearly, you know, some people have thought that they're nearly dying, but the actual reality of it, no one's actually. It's usually been a knock-on effect of that. So it's not that that's caused them, but there does need to be more information, more freely information, so people can make that choice, particularly if, you know, if this is a child as well. That's what worries me more, is that they don't know what they're getting from the black. They're forced to go to the black market because there's no other access to it.
And it's literally sometimes because regulation just isn't fast enough.
And then you start to hear the cost it is implement in this country for them getting access to the medicinal products. It's just ridiculous. So you can see how. Do you know how
much it could, when they get prescribed it? So it's not just a prescription that they would pay for a prescription. It's a super large amount. I don't know anything about that, if I'm completely honest.
So anywhere between 1,500 per month to 2,500 per month.
Right.
So because it has to be imported.
Right. Okay.
So the problem comes is where the doctor will prescribe to the patient.
Okay.
The patient then has to have a pharmacist that has a specials license.
Yeah.
Then there has to be an importation license, which all has to be paid for. That then has to be picked up from the country of origin that it's coming from. All of that transport has to be paid for.
I suppose that's secure transport as well, obviously, because it's a controlled substance.
Yeah. So you've got all of that, and that's where it all actually adds up on. Right. So it's not cost effective for the NHS to do it. What we need is a domestic supply. So there needs to be it grown in this country, so we're not having to import it. We're not having to go through all of that.
And we can also then fit into the regulations of this country. Yeah. Because the pesticide regulations, for example, say in San Francisco, will be very different of that of France or of England or the agricultural rules. So I think it's important that if we did produce it here in the UK for medical properties, medical use, then it would have to fit by the laws of the land. Definitely.
And I think there's a lot of confusion at the moment as well of where CBD lies. Because is it novel food? Is it not? Are they going to remove it from novel food? It's got medicinal properties that can't be denied, but when you're selling CBD products, you can't make any medicinal claims at all.
No.
And it's really confusion for everyone at the moment.
I think there's just a bit of a big sort of white noise through it all, and people, like you said earlier, is they're sort of trying to sell it as that silver bullet. This will cure you. If you've got depression, this is the answer. If you've broken your leg, you'll recover faster. If you've got cancer, this, it's not that.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many people have jumped on the bandwagon, and that's good in a certain sense, but on the other side of that spectrum is people are just falling under that CBD headline.
Yeah.
And you actually need to know what's in it, where it's sourced from, what the spectrum of that CBD is, what the profile of it is,
how it's been extracted.
This
is the real big one, is there any solvent residues in there? So and you need to know all of this, because it's not the actual cannabinoids that are the problem. It's usually it's been mixed with in order to turn it into a vaping oil, or to actually, make it the product that it is that causes the problems. So there needs to be more, I think, as well, freely available laboratories that people can use.
Yeah.
So that the tests can be done in reliable laboratories. I mean, I don't know, in the US you hear a lot of these stories of labs setting up but will give the results that you want to hear.
Yeah, some of them do.
I mean, and as you say, having the accreditation that we have in this country is what is required. We need to have that. But at the same time, I don't want to regulate it to the point where nobody can actually produce this anymore, because regulation can do that to it.
Yeah, it can. It's a trade-off. I think it's a huge trade-off. I think one of the things that personally I see cannabis moving forward is that we're going to have to sort of start changing how we talk about cannabis, naming cannabis and the different types. People often use, sativa dominant or indica dominant or hybrid. The realistic facts are that pretty much everything now is a hybrid.
Yeah.
It is a hybrid. It's a mix. All the colours have been put in there so many times. It's been mixed around so many times. Everything's a hybrid. You've just got to work out those attributes that are right for individual people.
Yeah, and then there's the stability of the genetics as well.
Yeah.
It's just a complete minefield. But it's. I mean, at the moment, I'm working on a little bit of a project, my home project at the moment, of looking at genetics.
Right, okay.
And
so that's plant genetics?
Yes, plant genetics. Well, specifically looking if a plant has been diseased.
Right. Okay.
So you can use a technique called PCR, polymerase chain reaction, where you can look at the genetics of the plant. So what you do is you actually extract the DNA, you then amplify that, and then you can use something called a primer, which is a marker which you can attach to it to see if it's present or not within that. Now, if a plant's been subjected to a disease, it will have particular markers. It will have particular genetic traits. So, for example, botrytis is one. It's a systemic disease which can be passed on via seeds.
Right.
So if the plant that was originally growing those seeds had been infected with botrytis, that seed will be infected. Well, you can tell that within the plant.
Just through the genetic polymer strain?
Yeah.
Okay.
Through this PCR technique. You can also sex plants by doing that as well.
Right.
You can detect powdery mildew, russet mites. But this same technique will also be able to, through a technique called qPCR, which is quantitative polymerase chain reaction. So basically that's telling you the numbers that are there.
Right.
You can look at the genetic profile of the plant to say if it's got the potential of producing THCV, for example, one of the trace cannabinoids, or if it's got the potential to do.
So those plants would all have a sort of precursor for that would be in that genetic code?
Yes, a marker.
Right, a marker.
If you think of it as a bit like a fingerprint, that it would have this particular marker that would say it can produce these particular cannabinoids.
So if there's a disease, like you say, that would be systemic, which is as soon as it means as soon as it's in the plant for good. When that passes on through the generations, would that pass through every single generation? So would that pass through every single seed, or will it miss some seeds? If it's systemic in one, will it be systemic in all? Is that kind of...
It's like any disease. It's yes and no.
Right.
That's it. So it will get passed on to certain ones. So it all depends if you allow that to proliferate in that plant. Right. So what you can do is, if you know that is it within that plant that you've got, what you can do is then do a lot of preventative methods. So, for example, with botrytis, you can lower the humidity within your room.
Yeah.
You could use extra silicone to help it stop penetrating the actual...
Build up the sort of strength walls of the cells, yeah.
Yeah. Cleaning things. Prevention is easier than the cure. It is way easier than the cure.
It is way easier. Not that many people listen to that.
Oh, no. They could save themselves a lot of time if they just, cleaned the pH probe putting it between tanks and just clean that side down. Why have you got a bucket of leaves sat there festering?
Yeah.
That is why you've got problems in your grow room.
That's why you've got gnats everywhere.
Yeah.
Because they're there.
Yeah. That's the little harbour. That's where they're staying, but you can't get that through to people.
And how do you sex it? Is it exactly the same? So you put a marker on it and then that sexes it as well?
Yeah, so you're looking for the Y chromosome. So you're looking for the boys. So we kill boys. We don't like boys. No, I love boys. Boys are good. But yeah, it's the same principle, but it's having that exact primer that will fit. It's a bit like a jigsaw kind of thing that they fit together to say, yes, you have got this. There's a yes-no kind of answer with it.
So would that work off... I don't know too much about this. If you had a hermaphrodite plant, when a hermaphrodite plant is sort of, very young, is it always going to be a hermaphrodite, or would that have a certain marker in it, or would that be just something that sort of genetically splits the plant at a certain time when it takes a certain path, whether it's stress or...
Well, I was going to say, depends how it hermaphrodites. So if it's if it's heat shock that it's experienced, you can't detect it being a hermaphrodite or not with this particular method. It's like feminized seeds. I don't get it anymore. We don't need to do this. We don't need to be soaking the seeds in gibberellic acid or, silver nitrate. We don't need to be doing that. Let's just let it be.
I think a lot of people that, especially in the UK, don't get that a natural F1 seed, so non-feminized seed. Sorry, the non-feminized seed is going to grow better, and it is potentially going to produce lots more than a feminized seed. A feminized is always going to be on that weaker side. Yeah,
it's going to be confused. It's not sure. It's energies. You're not going to go into producing what you're wanting. You're not going to go into the flower set production, the oil production. Messing with that can actually cause longer term problems, and then that little bit of stress will just trigger it to switch back to what it originally is. The genetics of the plant is what it is.
Yeah.
And sticking to that is better. I said the project I'm working on at the moment, I'm in the process of setting another company up called CHRONICLE, and we will be looking at the being able to sex plants, being able to look at the disease of the plants, and eventually going on to be able to do the genetic profiles of the plants.
Wow.
Long-term project, but
how, when you have a genetic profile of the plant, can you sort of make that your own? Can you copyright those genetic plants? It's a very sticky sort of...
I don't like patenting plants. We can't patent nature. I hate that. It's. We should share our genetics. If we've got a plant that's good, share it.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts on it. This whole patenting thing is I find it a bit underhanded. Just share the love. Share what you've
I
got.
completely agree, but unfortunately there's a lot of big corporations out there that are struggling. They're desperately scrambling to patent everything that they can so they can control the market. They know the market's going to be huge because it already is in America.
Yeah.
So they're just literally throwing as much money at it as they can to try and sort of legally secure it, which
is wrong.
It is wrong. And it's a shame because there's been so many people that have advocated for the use of cannabis, whether it's medical or recreational, throughout the years, putting themselves on the front line at risk, and I think they're going to get swept under the table.
It's for me, it's all about behaviour as well. So I feel with the way the medical cannabis scene is going is we don't need to throw tomatoes anymore. We don't need to be shouting and roping and getting arrested. There's no need for that anymore. The door's open. The door is open. It's now time to present your case. Get the information. Sit down at the table. Sit down around the table. They're happy to talk, but the more people are throwing tomatoes and more becoming aggressive about this, it's not the way forward. One of someone I really do look up to is Alfred Digley's mum, Hannah Deakin.
Yeah.
She is an absolute inspiration. She handles herself so professionally. She presents and states the information, but she's not going about getting arrested. She's not going about and behaving in a manner that's not required. I just think it's now time to show that, consumers of cannabis are not bad people, and by behaving like that and getting arrested is not the way to...
It's not the way forward, is it?
No, again, another person who's a complete inspiration and loved to death is Carly Barton. She's got fibromyalgia. She's one of the directors of UPA. She's just started Planted as well, which we're going to on Sunday. Ricky Lake will be there as well.
Really?
Do you remember Ricky Lake?
From Hairspray?
Yeah. Go Ricky! Go Ricky! From 90s.
I love that.
Yeah, I'm taking my mum along to go meet Ricky Lake, but she's big in to the cannabis world as well. Yeah, she's really... And it's about normal again, bringing it to, career women who, as I said, I hate that word normal. I really, really hate that normal, because there's no such thing as normal. Yeah. But we need to remove this stigma away from it being just stoners, eating pizza, doing nothing, bumming out, and, that Jay and Silent Bob image. Yeah. There is them, but, there's also these very highly successful women who have all got jobs, all got careers, got families, who choose not to consume alcohol, who choose to consume cannabis. Yeah. And we need to remove that kind of stigma behind of everybody who smokes cannabis is going to be a waste of space. They're going to waste their lives. Now, yes, there are some people who will do that, but I think they'd have done that with whatever. They just happen to find cannabis.
That goes back to the point about the language of cannabis. I think has to sort of change in order to make it sort of mainstream, just so people can understand it. I mean, I know that an older generation from mine probably isn't going to want to take, wizard's breath to solve their back pain. However good it is, they're not going to take, some of the crazy names. And although they're imaginative and they're crazy, and that's fine, but we kind of have to change. It's kind of a trade-off. Like you say, we've got to kind of lose the silent, Jay and Silent Bob sort of mentality, and then go with the sort of the professional. Let's get it out there. Let's get it legal. Let's inform, educate, and make sure people are aware of what it can do, the potential of it. Which I don't think we do fully know the potential of it at the moment.
Far from it. There is so much more there is so much we don't know. I mean, we are decades behind the Israelis. Absolutely.
I've heard they're on it. They are on it.
Oh, they are way ahead. The Entourage Effect, they're well on board with that.
Right. Okay.
I've been to various talks, over the last sort of year, I've been to various talks. I went to a GW one, which I was quite...
so for everyone listening, GW means?
GW Pharmaceutical.
Right, okay.
Who are one of the largest producers, cultivators in this country, who produce Sativex and Epidiolex.
Of course,
yeah. That has just been approved by NICE to use, to be prescribed. And I went to a talk by them and how they'd set up and everything. And I was quite disappointed in the fact that they just dismissed the Entourage Effect, and it was just... Yeah, it was just about CBD.
Right.
It was all about the CBD. And they'd done studies on rats with epilepsy. And yes, it was fantastic, reduced fits down. But then having gone to a lot of these other talks, and particularly from Canada and Israel, and one particular talk spoke about CBD, just using it as an isolate on its own for epilepsy. The amounts that were needed were up at 30 milligrams per kilogram. Don't quote me on these quantities, but I'm just recalling them. It was up at 30 milligrams per kilogram was required in order to stop the seizures in this particular child. But what the problem was with the isolate, there was side effects of diarrhea. Okay. So he was getting severe diarrhea, so he was becoming dehydrated. Whereas when they did full plant extract, so not an isolated individual compound on its own, just a quick sort of background on extraction, what you can do is you can do what's known as a full plant extract. So you actually take the flower set itself and just remove the oil. Yeah. So everything is there. It's got the terpenes.
Is that what they commonly call sort of full spectrum?
Right, you've got...
Or is that different?
That's a full plant extract is directly from the plant.
Right.
This is again with the confusion where the language is used, that full spectrum can quite often be a reformulation.
Okay.
So they will add things back in again. So it is a full spectrum, but it's not a full plant extract.
Right, so it's almost like an artificial. So you're hitting all the numbers, but they're just adding things in order to fill the gaps, for want of a better phrase.
Correct.
Right, okay.
I think they need to change the word to formulation.
Okay.
And I think as soon as you're adding isolates back in, it should be called formulation.
And you should be made aware that those are going back in as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can make that informed decision. So you can do that, and then you can actually further refine it down.
Okay, so you have a full plant extraction.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can then refine that down to the individual compounds and then just have isolate of
Right.
that. So the isolate is just pure CBD or pure THC, and they're known as isolates.
Okay.
So the pharmaceutical industry like isolates because it's nice and easy. It's one compound. We can study that. That's one variable. This is the problem with full plant extracts and doing studies. You've got that many compounds. You're going, well, was it this? Was it that? Was it the terpenes? Was it the limonol? Was it the camphorine? We don't know. And so that's why the pharmaceutical industry don't like that.
Yeah.
It makes the studies a lot harder to perform. Well, GW just did the isolate, and as I said, there were the side effects they were finding with this other study. When they actually used full plant extract, there was a quarter of the amount of CBD needed to have the same effect because it
Wow.
had all the other compounds involved there and no
Okay.
side effects.
Wow.
So the entourage effect to me is not even questionable. It exists. It completely exists.
Yeah, I completely agree.
There is this need for this isolation, this understanding of just one compound alone is not what cannabis is. We are full of receptors, full throughout our whole body of the endocannabinoid system, and just to say, right, well, just give this one compound and expect it to do something is just, it's ridiculous.
Well, that's where I think science and technology sort of spreads away from sort of natural evolution and sort of the plant science. We've obviously evolved with the plants and we've grown with the plants. So, like you say, we should have the whole plant because our body has those receptors to take that whole plant in. Where you're exactly right. If you take the one part of that isolate, that's going to have different effects.
I mean, you mentioned earlier that at one point you were on 12 different medications.
Yeah.
Right? In some ways, that's the entourage effect, isn't it? Because you're taking another medication to counteract
that medication. Yeah, it is. I mean, in a negative way, but yeah, 100%, 100%. I tried to explain it the other week as kind of, I did it in sort of a dietary form. When you have a plate of food, you need all of those things. You have to eat all of those things in order for your body to have all the effects. You've got to have the vitamins.
Yep.
You've got to have, this. You've got to have that. You've got to have the iron. You've got to have a certain intake in order to maintain a body. You can't just have carrots forever because you're going to have a huge deficiency in your body.
Yeah.
Kind of like you said, full plant extract. You have that mix that gives well-being.
Well, a lot of the terpenes within plants are produced as a stress response.
Yeah.
So terpenes are produced. I mean, I read this fantastic article once in Garden Culture by a Richard.
I think I know the guy.
What's he called? Hamilton. That's it. That's it.
That's him, yeah. I know him.
Well, there was
The hormesis effect.
yes.
Yeah.
It's all of these terpenes are produced by the plant as a stress response. So insect defense, fungus defense, to actually communicate with other plants. I mean, the fantastic article, well, it was a paper on trichromes, and there's 6 different trichrome formations depending on its function.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
There's one particular one that is actually designed, and it's pressurized. So when the top of the head is knocked off,
Right.
it emits what is within it. So the idea is so it can spray and then communicate with the plant next to it.
Right.
Oh, it just blew my mind. 6 different, because some are quite hair-like.
Yeah.
It depends on the function of the trichrome. So it depends if the idea of it is to actually keep the pollen in, to actually keep it so that you can fertilise the flower, or if it's designed to be able to communicate with other plants as a defence mechanism, so like on nettles. They
Right.
have this very similar. You break the head off, and there's acid that hits you, which makes you itch.
Yeah.
Again, this is all sort of design function as a defense mechanism of the plant. But a lot of people don't realize that a lot of these terpenes are, as I say, a defense mechanism. I mean, there's this whole thing about the flushing. Oh, can I go on about flushing?
You can. Let's just touch on the hormesis thing
Go.
before we go on to flushing, because it's a great question. I love asking the question. So yeah, the hormesis effect. I've just wrote an article called xenohormesis as well, and I've been listening and reading a lot of David Sinclair. #David Sinclair. Go and check him out. And he's got a thesis that with xenohormesis, some of the human evolution over the eye is actually developed to see different fruits. So when fruits are red, or they're ready for ripening, humans can actually see those, and they're under stress because they're about to die, they're reaching their ripeness, and we see that and then are attracted to that plant and take that fruit because of that effect of that xenohormesis. And then that will help us in turn, because that plant is then stressed out, that the chemicals from that stressed out plant will then in turn come into our bodies and absorb into our bodies, and then it helps us healthy. So we know when to eat the right foods at the right time as kind of food. I see kind of food as medicine as well.
Well, it is. Everybody
What
views.
you put in, you get out.
Oh, completely. We need to. I think we've actually been conditioned from a young age to take a tablet to cure it.
Yeah.
Not look at the problem. I mentioned prevention's
Dietary,
prevention's easier than the cure.
yeah.
If you're putting in shit, you're going to get out shit. It's going to come out of you. And we do need to look at food as a medicine, or as a part of that whole well-being side of things, that
Yeah.
we look what we're putting in to us.
Yeah.
And if that's not right, you're not going to be able to process, you're not going to metabolize things correctly. And it's this mindset of drinking more water. Keep drinking water. A lot of people's problems are basically down to you dehydrated. That's what you feel.
Yeah. Dehydrated and not eating healthy food. You've got to keep the active biome in your body. You're not one person. You're not one living organism. You're a host of organisms. I see it as, in your body, for want of a better phrase. And you've got to feed that biome to have a healthy body. And you've got to put fuel in it. You're not going to put gravel or shit in your car, are you? You're going to put what needs to be required for the car to move forwards. And I think it's kind of the same for humans, but we've just got to select that better. And unfortunately, at the moment, there's the whole price thing. Food and the nutritional value of food seems to be going down with the price.
Yeah.
So you can buy a box of tomatoes. I say it often. You can buy a box of tomatoes for £1 or 50p or whatever it is, but the nutritional value is absolutely no good.
Yeah.
You should be buying something. You should pay the money, or then grow yourself, or make sure that there's a nutritional value in there, because your body will thank you for it.
Well, it's like turkey Twizzlers.
Yeah.
The price of that, they are. I can see why we end up with this obesity crisis, and I can see why we've got this unhealthy, because it's cheaper to be unhealthy.
It is.
It's cheaper to go to a supermarket, and if you're on a budget, and if you have got literally, £10 for the week's food, of course you're going to go and get the turkey, because it means your kids are eating.
Yeah.
Rather than going, I'll go to that shop that says it's organic, and that's £10, and I've got 4 tomatoes, 3 oranges, and a banana, because it says it's organic. And I think that also we need to remove that good fresh food needs to come down in price.
It does. And we also need to get people back into allotments and growing in their gardens. Even if you do live in a council house or a government house and you have a small garden, you've got an opportunity there. You've literally got somewhere where you can grow tomatoes, you can grow cucumbers, depending on your climate. You can grow something there, even if it's potatoes. Just people don't do that anymore. Where when I was a kid, it was often that we'd go to a grandparent's house and they'd have potatoes, or somebody would be bringing, some carrots round or something, but it doesn't happen anymore.
I think there's more of a culture moving towards that. I mean, last year I was working with a school down in Mansfield,
Right.
when helping to teach them how to use hydroponic equipment so that they could actually understand where their food came from. And it's amazing how children don't actually think it just comes from the supermarket. Where does that come from? And it's again, we're back to the education.
We are. I started calling it the pre-packed generation.
Yeah.
And it's kind of you're eating chicken, but I think it's really important to know where that chicken come from and how that chicken was slaughtered and how it was deboned or whatever it is. I think it's really important for people to understand where that's come from.
Yeah.
Because I just don't think they do that anymore.
I mean, I'm lucky enough with my son. He's his grandpa. He likes to skin rabbits. So it's like, go down the shed, go watch him skin a rabbit, go see what it's about, And it's you do need to understand that it doesn't just turn up on your plate, not looking.
Not looking like that. We grew up with big dogs in my family, low economical family, and it was quite common to have pigs' heads in the house. We'd have half a pig's head in the house. And when I was a child, it might sound disgusting now, but when I was a child, it was my job to remove the eyeball from the pig's head.
I bet you loved it.
To be honest with you, I did.
Yeah.
It's a bit weird, a bit dark, a bit sinister, but as a kid, that's what I did, because the animals couldn't eat the eyeball, so I had to remove it, and you don't see that anymore. No, no chance.
Well, kids.
You don't walk into a delicatessen now and see pig's feet in a jar. That never happens.
No, you just everything's. There's a lot of things, a lot of censorship, and I think censorship has been the big contributor to this, that we have to censorship everything. Everybody's going to be mentally scarred for the rest of their life because they've seen a pig's head. It's fair enough if you're vegetarian, I'm not saying, but I think sometimes we need to remove the censorship of things.
Yeah, we do. Right, so on to flushing.
Yeah. Oh, plant
flush or finish? That's the question.
Stress.
Starve. Okay.
Can we use the terminology, we're starving the plant?
Yeah.
Flushing is for when you've over-fertilised. So halfway through a crop, if you're experiencing symptoms of tip burns and things, and your EC of your runoff is coming out skyrocket, yes, flush. But the final weeks is not going to remove any heavy metals from the plant by what you're calling flushing or so-called dangerous chemicals. Mm-hmm. You're stressing that plant, and what that plant is then doing, because a lot of people say, well, you can tell that's not been flushed, it doesn't taste right. Well, what it is you've got less terpenes being produced by stressing the plant. It's desperately trying to reproduce, so it's getting stickier, and we kind of need to. Some of the terminology used in this industry, it's been used for years and years and years, and you, as I have, been in the industry for
long time.
Yeah, decades. Oh dear.
Hang on, let me just remove my Zimmer frame.
Yeah.
There we go.
And the terminology flushing is, yes, flushing is used often, but there's no other industry. So in the tomato industry, they don't flush in order to remove before the end of the crop.
No.
Stressing is what it needs to be called. You're stressing the plant, you're starving the plant, you're trying to trick it into trying to reproduce.
Yeah.
That is what you're doing. And the flavour enhancer is coming from the terpene production from that stress, not because you've flushed out some...
Well, this is it. I have wrote some articles on it, and it's a very interesting topic, because it's some people, they're either flush or finish. They won't believe it, but you understand plants on a metabolic level, and you understand as soon as that's in there, it's in there. It's not coming out. The roots kind of work one way.
Yeah.
They don't. Where do you think that's going?
You can flush the root zone, definitely, and there can be a mobilisation of particular element. But what is in that flower set, it's you're not going to, if you've applied some pesticide to the plant, you're not going to flush that out. You're not going to miraculously pull it all the way from bonded in. It's about steering the plant. It's about.
So how would you say, what would be the best way if you're going into flush? I say use the word flush as in sort of that period. So you would, what would you do? What would be the best thing?
I would reduce down, because the plant has stopped feeding so heavily round about your day 25. So
reduce the EC.
Yes. So start reducing that down, and then in your final weeks, the jury's out. Do you go complete water? Is that completely stress the plant so it becomes limp? Or I would certainly be reducing the EC down gradually to that final week.
Which is really important, because so many people, when it comes to the end of producing a fruit, they obviously very excited because they've put all that time and effort in there, and they want to maximise it. So they just literally think more is more, and they try and fill it. They try and increase the EC. They try and get as much out. They think by putting as much in this last stage, I'll get more out. But that's just not the case, is it?
No. I mean, you can steer with particular elements. So, for example, with Dragon Force that we produce for Shogun.
Yep.
Hashtag Shogun.
Big up
Fertilisers.
Shogun. Hashtag Shogun.
Oh, hashtag Shogun Clan. Booyaka. God, I sound old saying that.
Is that what it is?
Ooh. No, yeah, so what you can do is you can trick that plant into the final stages. So we increase the sulfur levels.
Yeah.
It's a death signal to the plant. You're telling the plant that it's finishing. So what it's doing is putting that last bit of energy into the flower sets, into actually reproducing. So you can actually do that in that manner. But increasing your EC with the rest of everything, you don't necessarily need to do that. For me, less is more.
Yeah, 100%.
Less is actually more. And putting everything in that's coming out, putting 7 boosters in is, you're not going to see.
It's crazy. There's some people that have the most ridiculous feeding regimes. It's just not necessary.
No.
You'll just completely lock the plant out from week sort of 5.
And you'll waste money as well by putting everything in.
Yeah.
Being sensible about what you're putting in, seeing what your plant needs, helping it in particular stages or steering it, you'll get your best results. And where you really will see the biggest result changes is the environment. Get that environment right and focus on that, and you will see the real big impact on what your produce there. And you can steer it. Again, you can do those stress factors to get it to produce different metabolites, and that's some of the work I'm doing at the moment, is looking at different stress factors, different means of fertilization, different light spectrums, in order to encourage the production of different secondary metabolites.
Right. Well, I was speaking to Jason Ralph Smith, Autopop, big up Jason Ralph Smith. He was telling me about a system that they use called, I think it's called spiraling. And what they do is, in the Indies, they scratch the plant on the stem and they spirally pull a piece of the stalk off the stem. And they do this to the entire plant, sort of natural plants in the Himalayas and stuff. They do this. And what that does, it stresses the plant out completely, thinking, I'm about to die. It literally, when you do that, apparently they do it, and the plant pretty much falls over. And then in 24 hours, it sort of comes back, and then it has one last sort of hurrah, because it thinks, I'm being attacked, I'm being eaten. Yeah. I've got to make myself as attractive and as fruity and as juicy as possible in order to reproduce. But obviously, there's not going to be that reproduce. And he says it's incredible. He's never been able to reproduce it, but he says it's definitely a huge factor.
Yeah, I mean, all stress will have the plant, as I say, all these terpenes, the flavonoids as well. I mean, I've not even mentioned flavonoids. No. They're all produced in response to stress. They're all a defense mechanism of the plant.
What do you think of there's certain products, not going to name any of them, but there are certain products out there that are sort of advertising that they add to the terpene profile of plants?
Yes, you can.
It's a very...
it's a steering mechanism.
Right, okay.
It's that steering. Use of particular elements at particular times or particular compounds will steer that plant to produce different terpenes. But you've got to look at the genetic potential of that plant.
Yeah, you've got to look at the maximum expression of that plant's terpene profile.
Or even if it produces that terpene.
Yeah,
it's you do need to. So this is a big one of the big problems with a lot of the studies with cannabis, is that the fact that there are so many different strains, there's so many different hybrids that getting that same regime and that same product to do the same thing on every plant is pretty.
Yeah.
It's hard to do. I know I've seen lights, for example, using UVB. In the light spectrum, increase CBD in a particular variety, but it doesn't then in another.
Right. Okay.
So the strain also influences that effect as well. Yeah. Again, back to the genetic potentials of the plant. So if you understand the potential of the plant, you can then change your feeding or your growing regime or growing methodology or stressing technique to fit that plant and to fit that genetic potential.
Maximise that plant's potential. Yeah.
It's There's lots and lots of different techniques that people are using now.
Well, I was talking with somebody yesterday, and they've just moved over to LEDs.
Mm-hmm.
So they have the same strain, the same plant that they've grown for a long time, and they've changed from HPS over to LEDs. And they're saying now that they've got to change the feeding regime for it. It's just not doing what it used to do. And he thinks it's down to what's actually going into the plant as opposed to the light and the environment.
Well, could be a couple of factors there.
Right.
So what you tend to find with LEDs is your leaf temperature drops.
Right. Okay.
So the HPS has more radiant heat coming from it, so the leaf temperature actually goes up. Now, photosynthesis occurs at a particular temperature. Now, if you change that temperature, your rate of photosynthesis will go down or go up.
Yeah.
Again, depending on the ambient temperature, leaf temperature. Then you've got the amount of CO2 surrounding the plant as well, which is another limiting factor. And then you've got the nutrient as well, which is flapping my hands around. If you could see me doing all these hand expressions and then some of my faces. I do some cracking faces.
They are good.
Been told Rick Mail quite often.
Rick Mail.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of my faces.
I love Rick Mail.
Oh, he's
I
God.
love him.
He's God.
He is.
God rest his soul. Not that I believe in God, but anyway, if she exists.
If she exists.
Well, you've seen Dogma, haven't you? It's Alanis Morissette, isn't it? That's God, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Sorry, I've got off on one there. Yeah, so it's all depending what the limiting factor is within, in order to get your photosynthetic rate up. Now, if that is temperature, if that's your limiting factor, you'll obviously get your free radicals that produce that can be damaging. So it's making sure you're keeping up with all of those. So a lot of people run their humidity down at 40% and wonder why they have problems. Optimal's up at your 60%.
Yeah.
You want to be up in that high humidity, but a lower temperature of about 26. And no, that's not easy to achieve in all grow rooms. But you've got to look at what that limiting factor is. And this is the issue with LEDs that people have. They don't realise that the temperature, the leaf temperature that they're creating is actually dropped slightly. So they have to change the way that they're growing, and the whole, they have to put more heat into the room. So they have to take all of those factors into consideration. Usually more magnesium's needed as well.
Right, okay.
So the centre of actually chlorophyll, the photosynthetic pigment within plants, or one of the photosynthetic pigments within plants, I should say, and there are many, the central atom to that is magnesium. Just like you've got hemoglobin within the blood, that's iron, so it's the same structure as such, but only as magnesium is the central atom in that. So demand for magnesium tends to go up, and from what I've been seeing a lot of, there's been a lot of magnesium deficiencies with the moving over to LEDs, but it's just learning that new means of actually growing, and everybody's, I think, getting used to it, and we'll have that new generation coming through.
Well, I think, technology's moved so far, so fast, especially with LEDs. I think they're pretty much there now. I think there's maybe a few more years of fine tweaking and just getting the things right, but I think that they've come a long way. With the temperature, do you think it's direct impact temperature on the top of the leaf that would be important to sort of imitate the sun, or would it just be actually getting the environment warm? I'm speaking to a guy at the moment who's got this theory about VPD, and his theory is loosely, basically, depending on the pressure of the plant and the pressure that room's growing in, depicts how the transpiration rate from root to leaf, what that rate is. And if you have a negative pressure over a certain amount, what you're actually doing is you're kind of pulling on the syringe a little bit too hard through the plant. You're making the plant sweat. And this might also be, his sort of theory is that this might be a knock-on effect to maximizing the terpene profile within a plant. His idea is, if you're pulling too much out, if you can smell a plant very, very strong, it might be because
you're actually pulling the terpenes out.
You're actually pulling the terpenes directly out of the plant too much. So therefore, you're not going to get as much terpene profile within the plant, because you essentially sort of put it in a vacuum that's not optimal. Which I'm still thinking about, I'm still looking at, and I'm sort of thinking, let's say, for example, a plant that sort of comes from maybe a high altitude, or a plant that comes from a low altitude, and then when you mix those together, what that pressure would be, the difference, because there's clearly a difference pressure in.
Well, a good example of that one is opium poppies.
Right.
So if you grow opium poppies in this country at a lower latitude, you get something called laudanum produced as opposed to opium produced.
Oh, right. Okay.
So there's already evidence that the latitude and the pressure does have an effect on the metabolites produced within the plants. So that is one example of it. So to say that it pulls out the terpenes, I couldn't say for sure on that, but it's certainly the actual pressure is definitely going to have some impact on the profile. Let's call it the whole profile, the terpenoid profile of the plant, because of what will be produced. Definitely. The fact that, I mean, terpenes, as you know, volatile compounds, so any slight heat, they just disappear.
Yeah, they're gone. And when they're gone, they're gone.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting theory. I mean, have you got the article, or is it?
Well, it's just a theory at the moment. He's a manufacturer of a product. I won't mention it at the moment. I'll tell you afterwards. But it's just a really good theory, and he's working on it at the moment. And he's got test facilities. So I think he's got 4 different test facilities, and he's actually changing VPD in each one with the same strain, same environment, so quite lab controlled. I mean, it's not a lab, but he's got it as close as he can to a lab just to see what that difference is. So I'm just waiting on the results now, but it's great to speak to people like you that are insightful and interesting and sort of could think that further. I have spoken to some people about it, and they're like, no, that's bullshit, Rich. And it's kind of like, well, it's worth a thought. It is worth a thought. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely worth a thought. I mean, I wouldn't plough my money into it, but not that I've got any. But it's not. I can certainly see the theory. I can certainly understand the hypothesis. That, as I say, you just look at the production of opium and laudanum and the poppies being grown in different places. It's going to have some effect. It's going to have something. I don't know if that'll be positive or negative, or prove what he's trying to do. But it'd be interesting to see the results of that. How many? I want to say N. What's his N? N is the number of plants.
Okay. So it's 4 plants per.
It's. I'd like to see that repeated numerous amounts of times, so you could then start calculating your p-values to see if there is any significant difference in the variabilities. But it would be. It's certainly worth a look at. It's. Yeah. I wouldn't dismiss it completely.
Yeah, because I was just thinking of it because, like what you're saying, with the light intensity off the top of the lamp, and you've got to heat the room if you're in an LED. You do have to heat the room, but I just wondered if heating the room, you could do it from the top with a light, for example, or just an oil, just getting that temperature up. I don't know which would be better.
Well, it's the way that the light as well is emitted from the LED, so it doesn't penetrate the leaf in the same manner.
Okay.
So there's lots of different LEDs on the market and work in very different manners, and it's not my field of expertise. So don't be taking everything I'm saying as gospel. It's as I say, it's not my field of expertise, but from what I understand, it does not penetrate the heat does not penetrate the actual the leaf in the same manner. The wavelength of light is also very different to the spectrum. So you've got more precise spectrums which have different wavelengths, which have different energy transfers as well. So depending on what you're trying to do, depending on that energy transfer into the plant as well. Yeah. And it's all about excitation as well.
Excite who?
Excitation.
Explain.
Getting excited.
Woo! Oh, woo!
Yeah, excitation.
I thought that was a scientific term then. Callieism.
Yeah.
Callieism.
Another one.
Well, it's interesting with LEDs. I think it's the future. I think it's got to be the future.
I do.
Energy consumption. I think it is the future. The one thing that I sort of press on what I'm really looking forward to LEDs is for people that are going to start growing their own, doing what they do at home, people that have disabilities or abilities, people that have arthritis, chronic arthritis, people that are in a wheelchair, people that struggle with, bad back. I think the LED market opens up so much more for them as well, because if you're doing a setup in an indoor growing environment, if you're growing your tomatoes or cucumbers or whatever it is that you're growing, it's quite physical to actually get that environment up. Yeah. And I don't think there's enough looked at that sort of market for people, that have maybe been in the military, that have been discharged, that have injuries, or like I said, arthritis. I think the market needs to look at that a little bit more as well. And the LEDs is a perfect way because they're not heavy, they're light, they're easily moved around. So I think I think that's something that's very interesting.
I like the fact that we can tailor the spectrum very specifically to what you're wanting to get that plant to do. So you can really home in on those particular wavelengths that you can actually stimulate different metabolites.
Do you see it coming as a pre-program, sort of say through the various weeks? Let's say if your plant was flowering over a 14-week period, do you see it as sort of like that light changing, having it pre-programmed in with an LED so you could follow a perfect spectrum every week? You
could do light recipes. They're already available at the moment. I'd like to see more data on within the indoor environment. We optimize everything, so we look at nature to start off with to mimic that. But does nature give optimal growth of what we're wanting to do? Because we're kind of, in some respects, taking nature into his own hands and steering it to what we want to do. Yeah. So I'm not sure on that one yet. As I say, I'm open to seeing facilities that are doing it. I'm open to the whole idea of it. But what I like about the idea of the lights is the fact that we can use them to sterilise as well. So particularly in the UV region. Yeah. To kill things like powdery mildew, to kill botrytis, to kill things like E. coli, because everybody goes on about the plant disease and the plant pathogens, but we forget about the human pathogens. And if this is being, if what's being grown in the medicinal world is being turned into a medicine, it needs to be of a high standard. And things like E. coli, aspergillus, all need to not be present, or effectively you're given a poisonous medicine. Yeah. So somebody who's already immunocompromised, if you're giving them and it's got E. coli in it or salmonella in it, you're giving them another disease with what you're giving them. Yeah. So if we can do that, if we can use the lights to help, I read a paper the other day that they're using gamma radiation to actually some of the actual produce that they're using within the medicinal cannabis world, which quite shocked me, because gamma radiation, you automatically think, right, I better get the Chernobyl and
I'm thinking of the Hulk.
Yeah. You're going to turn into the Hulk.
But they do. I think I saw
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. Yeah, I think I saw a customs program, and when they're bringing things in like animal hides or dried fruits, necklaces and stuff, they put it through a gamma radiation process in order to clean it, to sort of sterilize it from any pathogens or anything of that nature. So
I mean, even though that gamma radiation it's got a longer half-life than, say, alpha and beta. They have shorter half-lives, so they will deteriorate much quicker. But the penetration of them is much deeper. So it's, I'm not completely. It just doesn't sit well with me. Gamma radiation, radiation
unsettles it a little bit.
That's a good word. Yeah. Unsettles. Yeah. Yes, I wouldn't want my produce that had been gamma radiated.
No, you wouldn't, would you?
No, I don't want to be Spider-Man.
No.
I'm quite happy being a warrior.
So how do you see the industry here in the UK? Obviously, with America looming at the door. How do you see the future of that moving forwards?
I'm hoping it will clean up more.
Yeah.
I will, and we're seeing it. We're definitely seeing it. There's been peaks and troughs through all the years of, all of a sudden there were lots of shops opening up. Somebody had just all of a sudden decided to open a shop out of the back garage. But we were just seeing, where do I see it?
So honestly, I kind of see that. I see that bubble burst at the moment. That bubble's burst. I think a lot of people that aren't in the hydroponics industry, that see it through the window, kind of see it as an easy job, kind of easy way to make money, have a shop. It's easy. And the reality of it, it's not. It's a hard graft. And I always say, I think the hydroponics industry is the sort of one of the last industries in the UK that's like the local fruit and veg. So the owner is in the store. I've lived through the generation where there pretty much was no supermarkets. You went to the butchers, you went to the corner shop, you went to the fruit and veg shop, you went to the fishmongers, you went to those individual shops, and normally the owner would be there behind the counter and have that correspondence with you. And then it slowly all moved over to the supermarkets. And I see the hydroponics industry, the owners are in the shop and it's a hard graft. They've got to be in it to win it. You've got to be there 7 days a week. You've got to open it, and the profit isn't there.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are becoming smarter.
Yeah.
A lot of people are becoming a lot smarter and understanding that they can actually construct their own kind of systems as well.
Yeah.
But usually a lot of love have gone into them systems, and they're actually one of the most interesting systems you see.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. That it is very much. We're getting more of those supermarkets starting to appear. There's definitely, and there's a place for them. There's definitely a place for them, so that you've always got that produce you need. But supporting local is always a good idea as well. And it's really good analogy that you've actually put there, that the grow shops are becoming more and more like your corner shop kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've not worked in a grow shop for over 6 years. Yeah, because Aqualab's now been up and running 6 years, nearly 7 years. So I've actually not worked in a grow shop for that long, and the sort of the change. I mean, when I first originally started, they were very back street, and they're becoming a lot more cleaner and a lot more. You've got disabled access.
Yeah, you have, and I think that is completely where the future is. Obviously, here in the UK, there is a couple of the larger chains of the hydroponic stores. One Stop is one, Growwell is another one, and I think they're paving the way with the way the shop looks, the professionalism, the advice that they're giving, the good, clean advice that they're giving, the amount of money that they're putting back into the industry that I don't think a lot of people see as well. Sort of, literature. Yeah. The things that they do behind the scenes, whether it's with charities or information or knowledge and education, they do put that money back in. And although these, the chains, I think it's the future. I think some of them see them that have those little sort of tiny little backstreet shops, see them as the enemy, and I don't see that at all. I think in this day and age, you've got to fix up and look sharp. It's as simple as that. You've got to get with the times.
Well, as you pointed out earlier, we've got a lot of people who are suffering PTSD. You've got a lot of people who are, now setting up, and they were back 20 years ago, wanting to set up to produce their own. They're wanting to grow their own, and they're wanting to, do it themselves. So they want to go to a shop where they feel safe.
And they want to feel comfortable. I mean, I've been in years and years ago, when I first started getting into hydroponics, and I was going into hydroponics, when you walk in, it is quite daunting. With some of the backstreet hydro shops, it is quite daunting now. Obviously, you know me, I'm covered in tattoos, and you kind of have that feeling of sort of, I don't know if you've ever been into a tattooist and you don't have any tattoos. You kind of feel like you shouldn't really be there, and the record scratches off, and they'll kind of look at you and sort of like, oh, who are you? What are you doing here?
You local.
You local. And I get the feeling with that in some hydro shops. I certainly used to, and now that's slowly being broken down, especially with Growwell and One Stop. You go in and you actually feel welcome. There's music playing. There's people who are willing to help. They're willing to have conversations with you. They're willing to spend the time and run through the products with you. It's not that sort of walk into a hydro shop, buy an A and a B, wrap it up in a black carrier bag, lift the collars of your shirt up, and then run off to the bus stop. Those days are gone.
No windows in the front of them, all boarded out, and that I remember. Back with that's how they all used to be. It used to be really dark, dingy. I mean, and being a young female working in them days, you used to have to. I mean, you used to joke about. I had the biggest dick in the place. the metaphorical 13 inches. That's just. And you have to come over blasé. You have to come over strong, confident, and some of the people that do come into the shops are not the most pleasantest of people. You do get big extremes, but then there are some absolutely lovely people. Absolutely people that are amazing. They've not got any qualification to their name, but they can tell you everything about their room. They can tell you everything that's going off in there, and they are the best growers ever. They never spend any money, but you'll be talking to them for hours. And with this new normal coming about, I mean, we never used to see females come in the shop. There's more and more females coming in shops.
And there's more and more females in the industry. Yeah. And you're paving the way for that.
Well, I'm hoping that I will inspire more to go into it and, try to say, science isn't just for men. You can have your own shop. I mean, there isn't many of us within the industry, but you can have your own business. You can do this. Nothing is beyond you. You've just got to work hard. I mean, don't get me wrong, you've got to work hard and have some sleepless nights and really you've got to have that determination and that mindset, but it isn't just because, you haven't got...
The rewards are there. You've got to put the work in, haven't you?
Yeah.
So anybody that's listening that wants to get into the industry, female or male, what would you say would be the first point of call for them to get into the industry?
Learn about plants.
Yeah.
That'd be number one. I say, knowing about plants is number one. Knowing about hydroponics is again, knowing about that. You don't need any qualifications. That's not, you don't have to, don't think that you've got to go out and get yourself a qualification. Having the knowledge and learn how to listen. People don't listen enough, or they listen to respond, not listen.
Yeah, they're waiting to answer. They're not listening.
Yeah. Learn, because if you're going to work in a grow shop, you're going to have to go through their whole room and build this mental image of what's going off in their room, because the amount of times you come in and go, right, I've got a calcium deficiency. Right, okay, come on, let's go through it. And you actually get to the bottom of it and they've actually got low humidity, but it's bang on. It's bang on.
It's bang on.
Bang on. And then you get through and you've been talking to them half an hour and you eventually get out of them that the humidity is down at 35%. That's why you've got the problem. Stop trying to cure this with throwing stuff at it. Look at what the root of the problem is. As with yourself as well. Always look at, is it the food that I'm eating that's causing me to feel low? Is it because I'm not drinking enough water? It's the same with your plants. Look at that. Look at the whole holistic kind of approach to it. Look at the environment. Look at what has possibly caused the problem. Are you overwatering? Are you underwatering? What media are you using? Don't just simply go, right, I need to throw some CalMag at it. It's got to be CalMag.
It's such a UK thing, They joke about it in Europe so much.
Do they?
Yeah. They say as soon as there's a problem, a grower in the UK's got a problem, it's CalMag. CalMag. That's what they say. It's crazy.
No, don't just... CalMag, if you're going in cocoa, yes, you're going to suffer with calcium lockout more because cocoa's susceptible to holding on to it. Some particular strains will have calcium issues, but it's not, don't just reach for the CalMag like you do the paracetamols.
Yeah.
Just, let's actually look at the problem. What is causing the issue, not what the cure is. It's that mentality. It's let's take a pill. Let's take a pill to cure the problem. And let's take another pill to cure the problem the first pill that you've just took to combat that problem. And then you're going to need another one.
It's a chain, isn't it? It's a never-ending, self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
Yeah, going round and round, and let's take another one.
I think people need to learn how to read the plant as well. I think the plant will tell you everything if you're susceptible to being able to read the plant.
Yes.
And not all deficiencies are necessarily a deficiency. Sometimes it could be a toxicity of something else, which is then causing a lockout, thus a deficiency in something else. So the answer is to reduce a toxic element in order to increase the negative.
Majority of the time, I've tend to have found is environment is usually causing the problem. The temperatures are getting too high. They've got too much of a big diff in the room, or they're going in the dark period and they wonder why the plants have stopped growing. Well, you've confused it. It's gone back into vegetative state. That's what you're not getting much out of it. You need to look at what you're doing and, as you said, read the plant. Get to know that plant. And this is where the genetic side that comes into it, is that if you can understand what the potential of that plant, if it's a plant that is, prone to disease or doesn't have resistance to heat stress, if you know that genetic potential of the plant, you can tailor your environment to that. You can tailor your feed regime to that to getting the best out of that plant.
Yeah, and I think you can't expect to get the most out of one plant by running it one time.
Yeah.
You've got to learn your plant. They kind of almost, I see them as like children.
Yeah.
I do. And you've got to learn how to get the most out of that plant, and you're not going to do it over 3 months or even 12 months. You need to run it several times and work out what it likes, what it doesn't like, what environment it likes, what nutrients it likes. But just running it one time, it's kind of like
learning your room as well, understanding what your room is doing. It's the amount of times we used to have people come in and going, well, back in the day it used to be bang on, we're doing everything exactly the same. Yeah, but you're in a different location. You've got you've got a different sized room. You're going to have a different air exchange occurring. What kind of air is coming in? Are you next to a road, so you're getting carbon monoxide from the road? Are you getting?
Well, I was just going to point that out. There's so many people now that on their intakes, I've noticed they don't have any filters on their intakes, which is just crazy because insects. There's a lot of plants that are accumulators. So if you're by a busy road or something, the amount of toxins and poisons that it's going to be taken straight in without a filter is going to be through the roof.
Yeah. You've got to look where your air intake is coming from. You know, all of these factors you've got to take into consideration before just going, oh, right, quick, just throw some CalMag at it. That'll cure it. That'll cure it. CalMag.
Yeah.
That's what you need. CalMag.
It's education. There are some unscrupulous shops out there, and they will, as soon as someone comes in, they will try and sell them everything in the shop, the most expensive item in the shop, which is disappointing, but it's down to education. We live in a world now where Google's readily available to pretty much everybody. So, I mean, there is always that, I call it the tumour. You go on, you have a stubbed toenail, you go onto Google, within 20 minutes you've got a brain tumour, you know. So you do have to filter the bullshit from the, you know, what's good. So, but there is there is knowledge out there, there is education out there. It's just people need to pick it up.
Yeah, well, hopefully, part of my aim is to get good education out there. That's what I'm aiming to do with, I say, with Campass, with Aqualabs, with everything that I'm doing, is getting that education out there to people who need it, and sort of dispelling some of the myths that are not really right. Yeah.
So just could you give a quick shout out to those talks and stuff so people can find them if they want to have a look? So it's Canna Talks.
You've got hashtag CanTalks, hashtag CPass or CanPass. That's patient can you say that word for me?
Advocacy.
That's the one.
I had to think then. I was under pressure then. I had to really think.
Under pressure. No, I won't sing. Nobody will listen. You've then got hashtag Facing Epilepsy. So anyone who is epileptic out there who feels alone, do not feel alone. You are not alone. You are not a monster. You know, if you want to DM me, plenty of people do. Feel free to. It's I'm always around to chat, but don't feel alone. You know, a lot of the feelings you're having are normal. Not that I like that word normal, but you know, there are others. You're not alone in the way that you feel. Trying to think of any of the other hashtags that I'm involved in. I'm trying to get involved in as much as I can because it's time for change and
it is time for change. And I see you at all the shows. I try and support you when I'm at those shows and do what I can. When you was at the Hemp and CBD earlier this year.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. It was a great show. It was a great talk. It was fantastic. It's great to have doctors up on stage actually talking openly about what they think is the way forwards. And it was just really interesting, really eye-opening. And it was good that it was on the business stage, and it was like twice as full as the main stage. So the main stage, there was literally no one there. Everyone come over to listen to you guys to talk. So
it was a bit nerve-wracking that because Dr. Christian Jessen was supposed to be there, but he didn't turn up. I think we were all getting like excited. Yeah, it's Christian Jessen. But no, he didn't come. But Dr. Danae Gordon, really, if you're really interested in the medical cannabis scene, I would give her a follow. She is so knowledgeable.
She's American, isn't she? Is she based here in the UK?
She's based in the UK at the moment. Yep. She was a practicing physician there. Prescribing cannabis, but she doesn't. How she views it is it's part of her toolbox. So it's not. She's not exclusively cannabis. Yeah. She is about everything. So she's about using other methodologies, mindfulness being one there. Looking at nutrition. That's the first place she will start. And how she sort of says is she doesn't position cannabis as this silver bullet. It's just part of the toolbox, and I should be able to use that for particular ailments and if people require that. But she specialises in more natural remedies. So bergamon's another one she uses. A number of different compounds that she'll use from the whole kind of that side of things, and not just sort of promoting it as the big silver bullet that's going to... and that's what I do like about... I love about Dr. Dana. I would call her a friend as well. She's so energetic and so just uplifting. There's lots of people I've met you know, as I say, going into this medicinal side of things, particularly as Basha, she's fantastic. She's from the CMC and from CPAS. She was co-founder of it. And when I actually spend the day with her, I come back so revved up, so
energized.
Yeah, feel like I can take the world on, and that it's all worth it, and inspired. So I've mentioned Carly Barton, she's another one. Jade as well, from Jade Proudman from Savage Cabbage. She's another fantastic, such knowledgeable women, and so they've got their own stories to tell as well. But they give you the courage to say, no, it's time for change. It's time to change this, and it's. I'm really looking forward to this week because I'll see them all this weekend, and it'll be when we see Ricky Lake because they've organised that. I'm really, really looking forward to it because I'll come away all. I've got this idea. I've got to do this right. Yeah. Time to change the world.
It's so important to mix with people like that. There's some rare people. I mean, personally for me, I get that exactly same feeling off Slim.
Yeah. Oh.
You know, when I leave Slim, I actually feel a big up Slim. #Slims Hydroponics. Slim's place.
Have you been to his new one?
Yeah, I was there last week. Yeah, when I saw him last week, it's very impressive.
Oh,
I was so good. Yeah, I've got so much admiration. But when I spend time with that guy, like you say, I come away energized, thinking I can take on the world, and it feels like he's passed me that energy.
Yeah,
you know, it feels like it's crazy. Jeff Winterbourne's another one. Whenever I spend time with Jeff Winterbourne, I get that same feeling where I'm driving home thinking, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to do more. I'm not going to sleep tonight. I'm going to write this, I'm going to write that, I'm going to make this. It's brilliant. It's fantastic.
They're rarities and the little gemstones that, you know, are in the industry, and it's you
went to Slim's Open Day, didn't you?
Yeah, the first day. It was brilliant.
I missed it. Was it really, really good?
Yeah, I met Big Nasty.
Did you?
Yeah, my son lost
BDP.
He lost his shit over it. When someone's like, send him a picture, like, look who I'm here with, and he's like, Mum. No, it was really, really good, really nice shop, really. It's gonna do well, that shop, really well. I was proper blown away. And Slim, every time I again go and see him, and come away really buzzed up. And
he's a cool guy.
Yeah,
he's a super cool guy.
And he's one of the veterans of the industry.
Yeah, the other thing I love about Slim, he won't take any bullshit. When he's willing to stand in a crowd full of people that are going, yes, this person, and he's willing to say no, and then say it how it is in front of all the very strong people. He's willing to do that, and he does that all the time. 100% real.
Well, he what I do like about him, he actually has always given me the respect that for many, many years I was treated as a little girl within this industry and pretty much ignored a lot until I completed my PhD, and people then started talking to me very differently. Not everyone, but there are sort of select people who were very much like that. And again, I thought I was a little girl. Maybe there's a lot of that was in my head as well. But Slim has always treated me with the most utmost respect, and always had the time for me, always took time out to sort of speak. And, you know, people like that, it doesn't cost anything to be like that.
No, it doesn't, no.
It doesn't at all, and it's...
they're just a rare people. They're rare people. You know, like the girls. I say girls, doctors that you're meeting the weekend. But they're rare people, and it's so important to take that energy and use it in the right way, use it in the right direction.
I'm a big firm believer in about the resonance that you give out. So everyone gives a frequency out. So you instantly meet somebody and you dislike them. Don't know what it is. You go, don't like you. Don't know what it is. Don't like you. And it's all about, for me, it's about the frequency at which people resonate.
You know, that's so interesting. Because I see it as a wavelength.
Yeah,
and if you're on the wavelength, sometimes I meet people and we're just not quite on the same wavelength. Yeah. It's just, and like you say, it's that feeling where you kind of like, But if you meet someone who's on the right wavelength, it's so inspirational.
You can talk for hours. You can have that silence without, that uncomfortable silence, and there isn't one there. Yeah. It's all about, there's some people that you meet in your life and you don't know why it is. You just click. It's there, and it's and it's rare. But it's all about, as you say, that wavelength, and resonance is all to do with that. And it's, if you harmonise, you might not necessarily be the same wavelength, but as if it harmonises, like chords on the guitar, they harmonise, certain don't go together, and you go, oh, that's nasty. And we just do that with certain people, and it's sometimes a bit unexplainable. But it's good when you get that wavelength right. I mean, I've been lucky enough with, I'm going to big up Mike McCall of Shogun Clan. He's going to be like, shut up, Cal. He's sales manager at Shogun. And
cool guy.
Yeah, we hit it off straight away. We met, and it was just rattled on about everything and it's when you meet someone like that, it's fantastic. It's really, you do feel so lucky that you've got them in your life, and it makes you want to work harder. It makes you want to kind of do that little bit extra, and it just makes life a lot of fun as well. Always a lot of fun. It's just weird how you don't see these things until, I say, that me coming out of denial and things, I've become more attuned to my body, a lot more attuned to things going off around me, reading rooms a lot better, and just really kind of more of an awakening.
It's awakening, and it's confidence as well. You know, you're coming forwards, and you've been sort of in the lab and in the warehouse. You've rolled your sleeves up and you've done the dirty work, and you're still willing to do the dirty work, but you're doing the right thing for the industry, for women in the industry, and just for the industry. You're going that extra mile. Like I said, you're taking time off work to go and do these talks, to go and meet people and go and educate people and have these conversations. So I have the utmost admiration for you. I think it's fantastic.
Much appreciated. We've got to go about this in the new way of actually talking about it and just getting it so that it's normal. Get it so that it's not stigmatized anymore. That's what's, I mean, I'm now getting one of the that really knows that times are changing. I used to be a Sea Cadet, and many moons ago.
I was at the Sea Cadets for like a week.
Really?
Yeah. I couldn't do it.
4 years.
4 years?
I
couldn't do it.
Cadet Petty Officer. Gold stripes and the lot.
I bet you had right shiny shoes.
Oh, I did, yeah.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. I was really good at shining my shoes, actually. I could see your face in them.
Jeez. I don't know how they did it. Sorry.
You polish and spit.
Okay, let's move on.
And elbow grease and all. Yeah. No, it's but that gave me a lot of discipline in life. But when I'm back in cadets, you know, drugs are bad. Don't believe me, ask your dad, kind of thing. And we did there, and now I have the support of one of the leaders there, and a lot of them are seeing what I'm doing, that I'm going into Parliament, talking about medicinal cannabis, and they're asking questions about it now. And that is when I know society is changing. Yeah. When those who have always, when I was a teenager, that all drugs were bad, and they didn't really understand, it wasn't really talked about the medicinal properties, are now asking me about it and are now proud of what I am doing. Society's changing. It is, and I come from that generation as well, where it's kind of, when people see, my parents, for example, they would pretty much view cannabis in exactly the same remit as heroin, or crack, or cocaine. They see that as the same. They don't see any difference with that. So I think that the sea of change has definitely turned. Yeah, and it's the older generation that are going to benefit from it. Oh yeah. With arthritis, the quality of life, there's lots more, and it's that generation where we need to, again, back to #CPAS, that's where we're wanting to help give good information to them, and so that they can understand what's happening and those possible feelings that I loved your analogy there that of now it's like we have Tenant Super or a bottle of 2020 as opposed to Mad Dog 2020. Yeah, anybody who lived through the 90s will know what a bottle of 2020 is like. I know I'm old because I've actually got through to that stage fashion-wise where the 90s is back in now. So I've sort of like, oh, you've got a Stussy t-shirt, you've got Carhartt trousers. I'm like, dude, I never took them off. Yeah. It's like my mum wearing flares. It's like, you can't wear those. I know I'm old now and I've got that back in, but I don't know whether I'd be able to have a bottle of Mad Dog 2020 again. Or Thunderbirds. Teenage angst. I know. Oh, what was the other one? There was Nookie Brown. Newcastle Brown out, yeah. There was Tenants or Kestrel. That was
We was Newcastle Brown Ale, so there'll be a bottle of Thunderbirds on the bus to town.
Yeah.
Then there'll be somebody will pull out a bottle of Mad Dog 2020. Normally the person who was kind of half old enough to actually go and buy it from the corner shop.
Yeah.
We all stood there sharing it before we went into the pub.
Yeah, get it down, you
Go
quick.
down, quick. You'll get pissed faster. Straight in Newcastle Brown Ale. Yeah, that was me done for the night.
Because you didn't have Alco Pops back then. You didn't. You know,
No.
like now, how you've got all of your Koppenbergs and you've got lots of stuff that tastes, I think, too pop-like. I think they need to take alcohol back to tasting like alcohol.
Yeah.
If you're not doing an Estevanson while you're drinking it, it's not really alcohol. You know, like, that would stop people drinking if the taste is so bad.
Yeah.
You want to reduce drinking down, just make it all taste bad. Don't make it taste like pop. It should, for me, it shouldn't taste like pop. And this brings me back to edibles as well. That I don't like the gummies. I don't think gummies should be in the shape of a cartoon character or anything. It should be made so that it is not appealing to children.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm going to go back to America again. I know I've said that about a million times on this podcast, but in the dispensaries there, when you purchase anything, whether it's medical or recreational, you have it in a child-proof, sealed, non-windowed bag. So if you accidentally lose it or you take it home, it can't be opened by a child. And that's what we lack legally or non-legally in the markets around the world. I think that's an ethos that everyone should adapt. And you're exactly right. It's kind of there's a whole, in the black market now, there's a whole sort of generation of like you say, sort of sweet rip-offs, like American sweets. You remember in the rave scene, the early 90s, you had that sort of, happy shopper ecstasy thing. They all sort of related to brands. I think now they're doing the same with cannabis and with edibles. I don't think it's the right path.
I don't. It's because of the effect of edibles and how strong they can be, and how people can actually think that they're dying. They're not going to die, but they think they are. It needs to be not. It needs to be made in a form that is attractive to adults, not to children. I mean, you're not allowed to advertise alcohol or cigarettes with anything that's appealing to children whatsoever. And that kind of needs to also follow into the cannabis scene as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think they need more information on the packets and on the boxes. They need a dosing. So when they sort of say a milligram, 10 milligram, 20 milligram, 200 milligrams, well, I'm kind of in the industry and I don't quite get it either. 10 milligram of what? You've got something this big and you've got something this big.
Oh, well, then you've got the percentage. So
exactly.
Is that percentage weight by weight or weight by volume?
Yeah.
And then, is this... There's such a minefield, and this I hate to say the word regulation because everyone goes, we don't want to regulate this, but we need some guidelines and something that needs to help those who have no idea.
Yeah, exactly. And that needs to be worked out on the ratios, on the boxes too. And I think it needs to have the effects very clearly on there that could happen, the bad and the good, and to have that dose on timings. Yeah. So especially sort of for edibles, anyone that's listening that has done edibles, everyone's overshot. It's kind of part of edibles, coming from a black market. It is.
3 days later, waking up.
Yeah, and still not feeling right, feeling in a bubble. Yeah. So I think it's so important to have like a minimal dose, and then say, for example, this is only for an example, then a time before you take another dose, because I see people they eat it and they think they're sort of seasoned professionals and they're hard and they're in front of them. They eat like a gummy like that, and they're like, oh, there's nothing. I can eat the whole packet, thinking they're big man. Sure enough, 45 minutes later, they're cuddled up in the corner, begging for help. Yeah. So I think there has to be some sort of warning on there. Yeah,
well, just some kind of dosing guidance.
Yeah,
dosing guidance, I think, is got to be the way forwards. And if you've ate something fatty as well, because these are lipophilic compounds. All of your cannabinoids are lipophilic, so it means that they're fat loving. So they absorb into the body far better. So that's why quite often things are made with the butter. So if you've eaten a sausage sandwich, for example, before you then take an edible, you'll absorb that far quicker because you've already got fat in your stomach.
Right.
So your body will take that in much faster. So you will feel the effect a lot quicker. An empty stomach, because there's no fat in there, it's not as quickly absorbed, and it all depends what the carrier it's in as well. So that needs stating as well.
Yeah.
So what is it that, how is being dosed as well, and being aware of what you've eaten can have an effect on, the absorption rate.
Definitely, especially with edibles. I know it's derived from the same plant, but I think that they sort of need to be not marketed, but they need to be labelled differently, because they are so different. You know, when you have an edible and it goes through one pass to the liver, it produces a chemical that's different to that if you was inhaling it through smoke. And I think that's important to point out, that, for want of a better phrase, the high is very different.
Yes.
And the stone is very, very different. It's almost polar opposites. And I think people just kind of see, I smoke, or I have smoked, so therefore I'll be okay with that. But
and as you say, it's making people aware, and then people can make informed decisions. And I think that is the key, is that, let's not mollycoddle everyone. Let's not make a nanny state, but let's give people the right information so they can make an informed decision. Yeah. Completely informed decision, as you would with anything.
Yeah, definitely. And I think moving away from the sweets, you can have edibles, but they don't have to be sweets. It's just, I worry so much that, if a child did take something, they would take it. Some of the edibles that are out on the market now, they are marketed like colourful, bright rainbow, covered in sugar. Yeah. You can't taste the marijuana in this product almost. Some of them boast on that, and it's kind of crazy.
Well, again, as I was saying about the alcohol, I think they need to return back to it tasting. I mean, when the instant you mentioned Thunderbirds or Magdod 2020, you knew that taste in your mouth, but it was very alcohol.
I certainly don't want that in my mouth.
Yeah.
Anytime soon.
It's not. It is this association, and I think you need to have that with things, and that this removing of the taste of the marijuana, I don't see as a positive. Maybe it's yes for medicinal purposes, yes, and that's being prescribed, and that's for a child who needs this. Yes, I get that, and if you can't get that medicine down, but it's back to the US. There's some of the things I'm seeing over there that are just absolutely crazy, absolutely crazy, and are going to cause problems, big time. Yeah,
they will. It goes on. You mentioned about children. They need to be educated in schools as well. Yeah, I think when I was at school, they did have a drugs education program.
Did you have DARE?
No, it was this weird, archaic. I went to a boys' school, so it was almost like Harry Potter, to be honest with you. It was crazy. And
you didn't have Mr. Mackey coming in going, drugs made.
No, we had what was his name? It's a science teacher. I can't remember his name. He came with this sort of like mahogany sort of suitcase that he opened up with all sort of the drugs on there, and then he brought photographs out of what could happen if you take these drugs. And of course, my first question was, why are they all open? How come there's only half of that one? Which he didn't like too much, but that was pretty much it. It was done and dusted within sort of 45 minutes, double period. So I think education needs to go into schools about medicines that are changing, especially people, even for alcohol as well, for children that are coming up, when they're coming of age, especially in the UK, they just, as we did, or as I did, as soon as you can get your hands on alcohol, it's kind of, you go down the park, that's kind of a rite of passage. Yeah.
I'll not even mention what happens behind the bike shed. It was, culture has changed a lot now. What worries me more now is about these so-called, I don't like the terminology, legal highs, but these that have come through your synthetics, your spice, and those that we've got no long-term studies on of what actually are the long-term effects of all of these drugs, your MCAT and all of these. We don't know what the long-term effects are going to be of these, and that does worry me a lot.
It terrifies me. It literally terrifies me. The amount of legal highs that are coming sort of from various different countries that have got labs that are literally taking a molecule, say, ecstasy, they move one molecule over in order to legalize it for 6 months until they catch on and put that out there. But by them altering that, they're just doing that for profit. They're just doing that for money. Like you said, the actual effects of that on your body is going to be devastating, or it could be devastating long term, not only physically but also in a psychosis.
Well, the whole education on drugs as full of pharmaceutical drugs as well. So you've got things like your gabapentins.
Yep.
Those need education on. Your diazepams. People don't realise that these are highly addictive drugs that have longer term effects, but it's okay because the doctor's given it to you. I think we need to also educate on that side of things. Prozac is a prime example of they were giving those out like sweets, but it can actually lead to more depression.
It can, as kind of like proparanol or citalopram or any of the sort of beta blockers, or when you're going into that,
But with that education needs, we don't just need to educate about street drugs. I think we need to educate about pharmaceutical drugs as well that then go to the street as well. So there needs to be a bigger open conversation about everything. And then readdressing things, the microdosing of psilocybin. This summer I went to a Breaking Convention conference, which was all about, it was a psychedelic conference. It was all about the use of things like LSD to treat PTSD. So microdosing these, not doing the mega doses, which everyone associates have taken that with, these microdosing of it. And one that I was really shocked about was ketamine. So there's actually clinics in the US, ketamine clinics that are to help with depression.
Really?
So they microdose with ketamine, and they've been finding the very, very positive effects. But I was blown away by it, because I'd always, ketamine in my head was horse tranquilizer.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a veterinary thing that was used in the clubs, and usually what people would use when they'd come home from the night out and it was time to sort of come down from it all, and associated with that side of things. But no, there's actually there's actually use of therapeutic uses as well, as is MDMA as well, and all of those compounds. So, but it's the doses of which have been used out on the street are what they describe as megadoses. So,
like a hero dose.
Let's take loads to get absolutely trashed. Whereas the amount that's needed, every microdose daily, is actually has a lot of beneficial effects, particularly on depression, particularly on PTSD. Some really interesting studies on that, and I think that education needs to come through as well. That we need to not. This is what's happened to cannabis, is that it's been demonized. It is the devil's work. And so part of what I'm trying to do is also educate people to realise it isn't the devil's work. It's not the devil's lettuce. It is
the devil's lettuce.
That always makes me chuckle, that one. I love it. It's one of my favourites.
And
again, we need to look at psilocybin mushrooms as well. And
Paul Stamets. I've been reading a lot about Paul Stamets and his about microdosing with the mushrooms, and that's really interesting because he's saying that at such a small level of microdosing, you don't feel it, your eyes don't dilate, but it's actually helping your nervous system, it's helping rebuild certain pathways in your brain and in your body. And over a certain period of time, it's showing that it's happening and it's working.
Neuroregeneration as well. It's I think we need to stop having this. Everyone says prohibition doesn't work. No, it doesn't. It does not work. Education works. And education about the whole picture is what is needed, not just to go, that's bad, that's bad, that's bad. No, everything has a place. Opiates have a place. Highly addictive, but they have a place. At the point where, you're in severe pain, opiates are appropriate to get you, to allow you to sleep at that point. But long-term use of opiates is not a good thing. And I think that's always, I remember being educated in school, it was heroin's bad. You're going to die. You're going to end up like Zammo. You're going to be found in the toilet.
Got caught chasing the dragon, got a smack in the mouth.
Yeah. So but everybody doesn't realise that it's the same group of compounds as tramadol, cocodamol, morphine. They're all opiates. And we need to discuss those as well, because what tends to happen, and one of my favourite programmes, Louis Theroux, I really love the way. Oh, brilliant. The way that he just stands there.
It's so dry, isn't it?
Yeah. And he'll ask the question that you're all thinking. And he's looking at the camera going, yeah, she said it. Yeah, you heard that, didn't you? You heard it. They said that. And I like that about him. Now, the opiate epidemic, he went over and was doing that, and he was actually talking to a lot of addicts, and the reason they'd actually got turned into addicts is because it was freely available in their the cupboards at home. So they'd become addicts from the age of 14 because it was normal to have Cocodamol, Tramadol, Vicodin in the cupboard, so they would just take them. They'd become addicted to that. The doctor would then take them off of it, make them go cold turkey, so they'd go to the black market.
In order to facilitate that,
Yeah, because they were going cold turkey and having the sweats, so they would end up being a heroin addict. And then they would move on to fentanyl. Or fentanyl would be the only thing that's actually available. Now, fentanyl is 100 times stronger than heroin. It has its medicinal uses, but there is a lot of it going into the black market. So people who are used to a much weaker, again, it's back to this a little bit like the cannabis thing. Yeah. Somebody who's normally gets a CBD 20-1 strain that's a 20-1 ratio of CBD to THC, all of a sudden it flips around and you've got a 21 THC to CBD, you've got a completely different effect on your hands, and the problems really do come then.
Yeah, the fentanyl epidemic, I mean, I don't think it's hit here in the UK, but in America it's huge. And the problem is now that the black market drug dealers know how addictive the fentanyl is, and they don't care. So where they were cutting heroin with it, there's rumours that now it's being sort of sprinkled or being incorporated into things like black market cannabis and other drugs in order to get people hooked onto fentanyl. So they want that extra high. They want to sort of take that path. And this is the thing with America not having a state medical industry, for want of a better phrase, state owned, that there's a lot of people that are homeless, that are drug addicts, that have mental health problems as well. It's not just that they're an addict, they have mental health problems, and they're trying to cure that, trying to self-medicate with various drugs. And then when people are sort of spiking them, for want of a better phrase, with things like fentanyl and other drugs to get them onto those harder things, it's a slippery slope downhill.
Yeah, it's, as I say, I've not seen, or from what I understand, fentanyl isn't an issue in this country yet. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it doesn't seem to be something. I mean, the heroin epidemic has seemed to have reduced. I think it's reduced. I'm not saying it's gone away, but it does appear to have reduced. And I think more what we're seeing works up at the moment where I'm from is it's the spice that seems to be the issue.
Yeah, I have friends, and they've been inside in prison, and they've come out, and they're different people, and it's from the spice. 100% it's from the spice. They are changed, and that's a damn shame. Yeah,
it's we need to stop calling it a synthetic cannabis, because it's not a synthetic cannabis.
No.
That is what it kind of needs. Stop associating it anywhere near cannabis at all.
Yeah.
It's an entity on its own.
Yeah.
And let's call it an entity on its own. And let's not call it spice because it sounds nice. Let's call it demon arsewipe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's not make it sound appealing.
Yeah. There's in UK Birmingham. There's a huge spice problem in the city centre. It's just it's terrible. It's horrendous. Okay, so Dr. Callie Seaman, thank you for coming on the podcast. It's been a huge pleasure having you on the podcast, and thank you.
No, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. High five. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Hydro Chronicle podcast with me, Rich Hamilton. See you next time. Today's podcast was brought to you by the Growers Guide series of books. Available from www.thegrowersguide.com now. Start growing today. It's easier than you think. Type in the voucher code podcast for an extra 15% off all orders. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time on the Hydro Chronicle.